Welcome to Nero Street. Like, subscribe, and stay with the mystery. Tell me, which part of the world are you watching from?
Chapter Ye, The Room That Lied Narrator. At number 13, Riddle Street, every window watched the rain, but one room kept its eyes shut. The Bell House stood behind a row of iron railings, narrow and severe, with a stone lion above its entrance and black ivy clinging to its eastern wall. At Jodenschatiefen that evening, a heavy door slammed somewhere inside the house. At the same instant, the clock in Silas Bell's study ceased ticking. 3 people heard the sound. None of them saw the door move. 7 minutes later, when repeated knocks brought no answer, the study door was broken open. Silas Bell lay dead beside his desk, one hand near an unfinished cup of black tea. The windows were latched, the chimney was barred, and the door had been bolted from within. Detective Elias Rook. A locked room is only a lie with good manners. Narrator. Inspector Elias Rook said it while standing over the body. He was a tall, spare man with iron-jan grey hair and a face that appeared to have been cut from the same stone as the lion outside. He had spent 5 years listening to witnesses improve the truth until it could no longer stand upright. Archie Goodwin. That's a fine sentence. Do you keep a notebook of them, or do they arrive when the door is broken? Rook. You must be Archie Goodwin. Archie. That depends on whether you're offering coffee or a subpoena. Rook. Neither. Archie. Then I'm Goodwin. Narrator. I had arrived at Bell House 10 minutes after the police, because Silas Bell had telephoned Nero Wolfe that afternoon. Bell had requested an appointment, refused to explain why, and promised a fee large enough to make Wolfe listen in spite of the refusal. He had also said something peculiar, Silas Bell's voice. Tell Mr. Wolfe that if the room lies tonight, he must ask which part of it learned the story first. Narrator. Wolfe had called that theatrical nonsense. He had nevertheless sent me to Riddle Street after Bell failed to appear at our office. Sending me meant Wolfe remained in his brownstone on West Central 8th Street, where the chairs knew their duty. The beer arrived on time, and no corpse had ever interrupted dinner without serious consequences. The Bell House study was less orderly. A large walnut desk stood near the center of the room. Shelves covered the west wall. Green curtains hid 2 tall windows facing a narrow courtyard. A coal grate occupied the north wall, though iron bars had been fixed across the chimney, opening years earlier after a burglary. Silas Bell lay on the carpet between the desk and the fireplace. He was 60 Jan 1, broad Jan-shouldered, and neatly dressed in a dark suit. His face was turned toward the door. A thin line of blood had dried beneath his left ear. Beside his right hand lay a brass letter opener in the shape of a narrow sword rook. Not the weapon. Archie. Too clean. Rook. Too dull. The wound was made by something round and narrow. The doctor believes death was nearly immediate. Archie. Time. Rook. Between 8 Gen 50 and 9 Gen 20. Archie. That's a generous interval. Rook. The room has been unhelpful. Narrator. The clock stood upon the mantel. It was a square black case with silver hands both fixed at Joshitsi. The glass was unbroken. A small brass pendulum hung motionless behind its lower window. The cup of tea stood at the left edge of the desk. It was nearly full. A dark skin had formed across the surface. Beside it lay an open notebook, a fountain pen, and one line in Silas Bell's handwriting. Silas's note: the first witness heard nothing. Archie, who found him? Rook. His daughter, Marion Bell. She came downstairs after hearing the slam. The housekeeper and Silas's solicitor were already in the hall. They knocked, called his name, and finally forced the door. Archie. Where was everyone at Jodenschatiefen? Rook. We'll get to that. First explain how you entered. Archie. Through the front door. It has a brass knob and no imagination. Rook. How did the killer leave this room? Archie. If I answer now, you'll expect a discount. Narrator. I went to the study door. It was solid oak, thick enough to discourage both sound and relatives. The inner bolt was a horizontal brass bar sliding into a deep socket in the frame. When the door had been forced, the screws holding the socket had torn from the wood. The bolt itself remained pushed fully across. I knelt. A narrow line of pale wax marked the lower surface of the bolt. Near the floor, caught beneath the torn socket, was a black fiber no longer than an eyelash. Rook. Thread. Archie, maybe. Have you touched it? Rook. No, Archie. Then you have shown greater restraint than most of the household. Narrator. Elias Rook signaled to a police photographer. After the fiber had been recorded and collected, I examined the gap beneath the door. It was nearly half an inch high. The carpet stopped well short of the threshold, leaving bare boards on both sides. A tiny wet mark darkened the wood beneath the bolt side of the door. Archie, it's raining outside, but not in here. Rook, a wet shoe? Too small. It looks like a drop. Rook, from what? Archie, ask the room. It's giving the statement. Narrator, the two windows were fastened by old iron catches. Dust lay undisturbed along both sills. Outside, rain streamed down the glass. The courtyard below was enclosed by high brick walls, and the nearest roof was 30 feet away. The green curtains were drawn completely shut. I pulled one aside. A fine strand of black cord hung from the curtain ring, cut cleanly. At one end, Archie. Was this curtain tied back earlier? Rook, the housekeeper says both were open during dinner. Archie, open curtains or open windows? Rook, curtains. Archie, so, somebody closed them. Rook, Silas may have. Archie, certainly. Dead men should not be denied ordinary household habits. Narrator, the curtain cord on the right window reached the floor. The cord on the left was almost 2 feet shorter. I looked at the black fiber Rook's man had taken from the bolt. They appeared to match. Rook, a cord through the gap beneath the door. Archie, possibly. But pulling a bolt sideways from the hall is easier to describe than to perform. The cord would need to draw the bolt toward its socket, then release without pulling it back. Rook, wax on the bolt could hold a loop. Archie, now you're earning that sentence. Narrator, Rook crouched beside me. He studied the bolt and then the gap beneath the door. Rook, the killer loops the cord around the bolt, leaves the room, closes the door, and pulls. The bolt slides into place. A sharp jerk frees the cord from the wax. Archie, most of it. One fiber stays trapped. Rook, then the locked room is solved. Archie, the lock is explained. That isn't the same thing. Rook, what remains? Archie, why a man planning a trick with curtain cord also stopped the clock, left a cup of tea, and slammed a door loudly enough for 3 people to hear. Narrator. Elias Rook looked at the dead man. Rook, you think the slam was staged? Archie, I think everything in this room is applying for the same job. Rook, which job? Archie. Telling us Silas Bell died at Joshitsi. Narrator. Rook's expression did not change, but his eyes did. He summoned the household. They entered one by one and took positions along the bookshelves, each keeping a safe distance from the body and an unsafe distance from suspicion. Marian Bell came first. She was 30 Jan 2, dark, Jan-haired, pale and controlled. She had inherited her father's level gaze, but not his heavy features. Behind her came Arthur Bell, Silas's younger brother, a thin man with a carefully trimmed beard and nervous hands. Arthur managed the Bell family printing works, though from his expression he would have preferred to manage the weather. Graham Stone, the family solicitor, entered, carrying a leather document case. He was in his 50s, compact and neat, with the calm voice of a man accustomed to charging by the hour. Clara Webb, Silas's private secretary, stood near the door. She was perhaps 40, plain in dress, sharp in attention, and angry in a quiet way. The housekeeper, Ellen Shaw, remained in the hall until Rook ordered her inside. She had served the Bell family for 20 Jan 8 years and regarded the police as temporary visitors who would eventually leave dirt on the carpet. The 6th person was Dr. Owen Hart, Silas's physician and an old friend of the family. He had arrived for dinner and remained after Silas complained of chest pain. Rook. Miss Bell, tell Mr. Goodwin what happened. Marion, at 9 o'clock father left the drawing room and came here. He said he expected a private visitor. Archie, did he name the visitor? Marion, no, Archie. Was anyone admitted? Ellen, not through the front door. Archie, back door. Ellen, locked from 8 to 10:30. I had the key. Archie, and windows. Ellen, all shut because of the storm. I know the time because the long clock on the landing had just begun to strike the quarter. Rook, it struck at Joden. Marion, it loses 2 minutes. Archie, a clock that loses time but keeps witnesses. Useful. Marion, I came down immediately. Mr. Stone and Mrs. Shaw were in the hall. Stone, I had left the drawing room to ask Silas for his signature on a trust paper. Ellen, I was bringing the tea tray back to the kitchen. Archie, you had served Mr. Bell tea. Ellen, at 9 Jan 5 black tea. No milk, no sugar. Archie, was the cup hot when you found him? Marion, I didn't touch it. Rook, it was barely warm when I arrived at 9 Jan 30 Jan 8. Dr. Hart, that means little. The room is cold. Archie, not as cold as the tea would be if poured at 9 Jan 5 Hart. You are not a physician. Archie, I drink tea. It gives me field experience. Narrator, Dr. Hart frowned. He had a large head, silver hair, and a dark red waistcoat that seemed too cheerful for the room. Rook, where were you when the door slammed? Hart, in the dining room with Arthur Bell and Miss Webb. Arthur, yes. Clara, for most of the time. Rook, most? Clara, Dr. Hart left briefly to telephone his office. Hart, at 9:10, I was gone perhaps 3 minutes. Rook, and you, Mr. Bell. Arthur, in the dining room. I never left. Clara, neither did I. Archie, what were you discussing? Arthur, the printing works. Clara, Mr. Bell was demanding access to company accounts. Arthur, that is a private matter. Archie, it became less private when your brother died beside his desk. Arthur, Silas intended to sell the works. He had no right. Marion, he owned 70%. Arthur, he inherited 70%. Marion, so did you. You spent yours. Arthur, this is neither the time nor the place. Archie, it's exactly the place. The time is under investigation. Narrator. Rook's mouth moved slightly. It may have been approval or indigestion. He turned to Graham Stone. Rook, what trust paper? Required Silas Bell's signature. Stone, a transfer involving 3 Riddle Street properties. Silas had delayed it for a week. Archie, who benefits from the transfer? Stone, the Bell Foundation. Archie, who controls the foundation? Stone, Silas did. Archie, past tense creates vacancies. Stone, under the trust terms. Control passes jointly to Marion Bell and Arthur Bell. Marion stared at him. Marion, I didn't know that. Arthur, neither did I. Clara, Mr. Bell knew. Archie, which Mr. Bell? Clara, Silas. This afternoon he dictated a letter changing the arrangement. Stone, that would require a signed amendment. Clara, he signed one. Stone, where is it? Clara, in the blue file I placed on his desk at 6. Narrator, everyone looked at the desk. There was no blue file, Rook. We found no such document. Clara, then someone took it. Arthur, or it never existed. Clara, I typed it. Arthur, you typed whatever Silas ordered. That does not prove he signed it. Clara, I watched him sign. Archie, who gained control under the amendment. Clara hesitated. Clara, the foundation would have been dissolved. The properties were to be returned to their former owners. Stone, impossible. Clara, that was his instruction. Marion, former owners. Clara, families, whose houses were acquired by the Bell Company 20 years ago. Arthur, those purchases were legal. Clara, Mr. Bell had begun to doubt that. Narrator, the rain struck the windows harder. For the first time, the room seemed to listen. Archie, what made him doubt it? Clara, a ledger. Rook, where is it? Clara, he kept it locked in this room. Archie, in the desk. Clara, number I never knew where. Rook, what did the ledger contain? Clara, payments made during the property purchases. Mr. Bell said one payment had been entered twice, once to a seller and once to a man who never existed. Stone, Silas was mistaken. Clara, he did not think so. Arthur, why was I not told? Clara, perhaps because your signature appeared on the account sheet. Arthur Bell went white. Arthur, that is a lie. Clara, I saw it. Narrator, we now had a missing amendment, a missing ledger, disputed property, and a family fortune with cracks in it. The corpse was becoming crowded. I returned to the desk. The open notebook showed the single line. The first witness heard nothing. Beneath it, the paper carried a faint indentation. Archie, pencil. Rook handed me one. I shaded lightly across the page. The pressure marks from a sheet that had been removed above it slowly appeared. 3 words became visible. Ask about Marrow. Rook Marrow. Marion, there is no one by that name. Stone, it may refer to a place. Ellen, Mr. Bell hated Marrow. Archie, that eliminates the kitchen. Narrator, beneath the words, was the beginning of another sentence. The room will say, the rest had not been written, or the pressure had been too light to survive. Dr. Hart stepped closer. Silas had become fearful in recent weeks. He imagined threats. This may be meaningless. Archie, he predicted his room would lie. Telephoned Nero Wolfe, hid a ledger, changed a trust, and ended up dead. His imagination had excellent sources. Hart, he telephoned Wolfe. Archie, this afternoon, Hart. Why? Archie, I was hoping one of you would tell me. Narrator, no one did. Rook dismissed the household, but ordered them to remain in the house. As Marion passed the desk, she stopped beside her father. Marion, he knew this would happen. Archie, maybe. Marion, then why didn't he leave? Archie, people will leave money, houses, and even families. They dislike leaving a question unanswered. She looked at me. Marion, can Nero Wolfe answer it? Archie. He can answer most questions. The trouble is getting him interested in the one you're asking. Marion, tell him I'll pay. Archie, that improves his hearing. Narrator, when they had gone, Rook closed the door as far as its broken frame allowed. Rook, what do you make of them? Archie, Marion is holding something back. Arthur is afraid of the ledger. Stone is afraid of the amendment. Clara is angry enough to tell the truth, but clever enough not to tell all of it. Hart wants us to believe the victim was confused. Ellen knows every door in the house and resents anyone who uses one incorrectly. Rook, and the room? Archie. The room is overacting. I pointed to the mantel clock. Archie. The hands say Joe should see. Marion's landing clock also says the slam came at Joe. Should see, that is one agreement too many. Rook, the study clock could have stopped when the door slammed. Archie, how? Rook, vibration. Archie, this clock has sat through 30 years of doors, thunder, and family arguments. Tonight, one slam frightens it to death. Rook lifted the clock from the mantel and examined its back. A small winding key remained in one hole. Rook, the mechanism is jammed. Archie, by what? He opened the rear panel. A narrow strip of blue paper had been pushed between 2 gears. Rook, from the missing file. Archie, probably. Someone stopped the clock deliberately, using a piece of the document they stole. Rook, that places the killer at the mantel. Archie, it also tells us the clock did not stop, because the door slammed. Rook, then why did the door slam at the same moment? I looked around the room. The fireplace was barred. The windows were latched. The door had been bolted from outside with curtain cord. Yet the witnesses had heard a slam from the hall. I went to the nearest bookcase. On its top shelf stood a row of thick law books. One volume projected half an inch farther than the others. A thin black cord ran behind it and disappeared through a small hole in the wooden backing. Archie. Here, Rook joined me. Bell House had been built before electric bells, when servants were summoned by cords and voices carried through metal pipes. The tube led upward. Rook. To the landing. Archie, or a bedroom. Near its mouth lay a small wooden block attached to the black cord. When the cord was pulled from above, the block struck the hollow panel of the bookcase. It produced a deep, sharp report. From the hall it sounded exactly like the study door slamming. Rook. So no door moved at Joshitsi. Archie. Correct. The witnesses heard a noise made inside the wall. Rook. By someone upstairs. Archie. Probably Rook. Marion Bell was upstairs. Archie. And says she came down because she heard the slam. Rook. She could have pulled the cord, descended and pretended surprise. Archie. She could. So could anyone who went upstairs before 9:17 and prepared a delayed pull. Rook. Delayed how? Archie. A weight, a candle, a thread softened by steam. We'll search. Narrator. Rook stared at the speaking tube. Rook. The clock was stopped. The false slam was arranged. The bolt was drawn from outside. 3 lies. Archie. 4. Rook. What's the 4th? I picked up the cup of black tea. The dark surface had formed a thick skin, but tea without milk does not form one quickly. I tilted the cup. The layer moved as a single oily sheet. Archie. This isn't ordinary tea. Rook smelled it. Rook. What is it? Archie. Tea mixed with something meant to cool and darken it. Perhaps starch, maybe a thin glue. Rook. Why? Archie. To make tea poured recently, look as if it had stood untouched for a long time. Rook. That would make Silas appear dead earlier, not later. Archie. Rook. The room gives 2 times. Archie. Exactly. The clock and slam say Joe. Shitsi. The cold, Jan-looking tea says Silas had been sitting here since shortly after 9. Rook. Which is true? Archie. Maybe neither. Narrator. My telephone rang. It was Wolfe. Archie. You have excellent timing. The room has 4 lies, 6 suspects, a missing ledger, and tea that may be suitable for repairing furniture. Wolfe. Describe the tea. Archie. Black, nearly full, oily skin on top. Served at 9:05. Supposedly untouched. Wolfe. And the spoon. I looked at the tray. There was no spoon. Archie. Missing. Wolfe. Sugar bowl. Archie. In the hall, according to the housekeeper. Bell took neither milk nor sugar. Wolfe. Then someone stirred the additive with an implement and removed it. What else? I told him about the stopped clock, the blue paper in the gears, the cords and operated wall panel, the bolted door, the cut curtain tie, the damp mark beneath the threshold, and Silas's unfinished note. There was silence at the other end. Archie. Are you thinking? Or did lunch arrive? Wolfe. The phrase, the first witness, heard nothing. Who was the first witness? Archie. Marion says she heard the slam first. Wolfe. Then she heard something. Archie. Good point. Wolfe. The first witness was not a person. I looked at the mantel clock. Archie. The clock. Wolfe. Number a clock does not hear. What stood nearest the victim? I turned slowly. On the desk, beside the notebook, stood a small recording machine used for dictation. Its wax cylinder was in place. Archie. A recorder. Wolfe. Play it. Narrator. Rook found the switch. The cylinder began to turn with a soft scraping sound. For several seconds there was only static. Then Silas Bell's voice emerged, faint but clear. Silas's recorded voice. The property ledger proves the payment was false. If anything happens to me, the name is hidden where Arthur will never look. A chair scraped. Silas spoke again, but now his voice had changed. Silas's recorded voice. You came early. An unseen visitor answered, too softly for the words to be understood. There was a sharp knock, then silence. No door slammed, No clock struck. No cry was heard. The cylinder continued turning for nearly 2 minutes before it stopped. Rook checked the machine. Rook, the recording ends at 8:56. The machine's timer marked the start. Archie, then Silas Bell, was attacked 21 minutes before the room said he was. Rook, and everyone's alibi after 9 is worthless. Wolfe's voice. Not worthless. Archie, manufactured. Narrator Wolfe was still on the telephone. His voice filled the study with the calm authority of a man who had not been required to enter it. Wolfe, the killer did not merely escape from a locked room. The killer constructed a later death so that an earlier absence would be ignored. Rook, can you name the killer? Wolfe, number you have supplied mechanics, not motive. Find the missing ledger, find the blue amendment, determine where the speaking tube ends. And do not assume that the person who prepared the room was the person Silas Bell admitted. Rook, 2 people. Wolfe, possibly. A knock sounded from inside the wall. Once twice, then a third time. We all turned toward the bookcase. The hidden speaking tube had carried the sound from somewhere above us. Rook drew his pistol. I opened the broken study door, and we ran into the hall. At the top of the staircase, Marion Bell stood motionless beneath the landing clock. Marion, that came from my father's bedroom. We climbed the stairs. Silas Bell's bedroom door was open. The room was empty, but the carpet near the wardrobe had been pulled aside. Beneath it stood a square iron hatch fitted into the floor. The hatch was locked. In its keyhole hung a strip of blue paper. Rook bent to examine it. Rook, from the missing amendment. Archie, the room downstairs told us when Silas died. This one may tell us why. Behind us, the landing clock began to strike 10. On the final stroke, something moved beneath the iron hatch. Not a person. A metal box slid across stone, pushed by an unseen hand in the darkness below. Then came a muffled voice. Voice beneath the floor. Do not open it. Narrator. Elias Rook looked at me. Rook. Another locked room. Archie. Number. I stared at the blue paper, trembling in the keyhole. Archie. The same lie has simply moved upstairs. Chapter 2. 4 unquiet faces. Narrator. The voice beneath the iron hatch spoke only once. Voice beneath the floor. Do not open it. Then came the scrape of metal across stone, followed by silence. Elias Rook ordered 2 officers to guard the landing while he examined the hatch. It was a square iron plate set between the beams beneath Silas Bell's bedroom. The lock was old, but fresh scratches surrounded its keyhole. A strip torn from the missing blue amendment hung from it like a small flag. Archie Goodwin, Summonown, is fond of leaving stationery and machinery. Rook, or someone wants us to think the same hand stopped the study clock and opened this hatch. Archie, you're becoming suspicious. Rook, I was suspicious before you arrived. Archie, then I'm improving the quality. Narrator, Rook tried the handle. The hatch did not move. One of the officers returned with a crowbar. Before Rook allowed him to use it, I knelt and put an ear to the iron. Nothing breathed below us. Nothing shifted. Whatever had spoken was either waiting or gone. The crowbar tore the lock from its plate. Beneath the hatch, narrow stone steps descended into darkness. Rook went first with his pistol and flashlight. I followed because Wolfe had once informed me that curiosity was not a virtue when it persuaded a man to enter a cellar behind a policeman with a gun. I had thanked him and continued practicing it. The stairs ended in a low passage running between the walls of Bell House. Iron pipes crossed the ceiling. Dust covered the floor except for 2 fresh trails. Zone had been made by shoes. The other had been made by a small metal box. At the end of the passage we found the box against a brick wall. It was unlocked and empty. Beside it stood an old speaking horn connected to the tubes inside the house. Rook lifted the horn. Rook. The voice came through this. Archie, from where? Rook. Any room connected to the system. Archie. So no one was beneath the floor. The voice was another performance. A thin wire ran from the horn to a spring device fixed against the wall. The device held an empty wax cylinder. Archie recorded in advance. Rook. The words were released when the hatch opened. Archie. Except the hatch was still locked. Rook examined the mechanism. A cord rose through a hole beside the stairs. Rook, opening the bedroom wardrobe, could have pulled it. Archie, which means someone wanted us to find the hatch, hear the warning, and hesitate. Rook. Long enough for what? Archie. That depends on who needed time. Narrator. The box had been wiped clean, but one corner bore a pale ring of clock oil. A few grains of blue wax clung to its lower edge. Inside, the velvet lining showed 4 narrow impressions, as if it had once held metal tools. Rook collected the wax and oil. Rook, a clockmaker's case. Archie, maybe, or a case arranged to resemble one. Rook, you object to every answer, Archie. Only the convenient ones. Narrator, at the passage's far end, a small wooden door opened into the pantry behind the dining room. Its inner latch had been lifted. Someone familiar with Bell House could enter the wall passage without using the bedroom hatch. The locked hatch had not kept anyone below. It had kept us looking above. By 1 in the morning, Rook had identified 4 people who had quarreled with Silas Bell during the week before his death. They were brought to the drawing room, where the lamps burned too brightly and the portraits continued disapproving of everybody. The first was Silas's daughter. Her full name was Marion Ivy Bell, but she had been called Ivy since childhood. Police records and Graham Stone's formal manner had supplied Marion during the first questioning. Ivy corrected me before I had finished saying it. Ivy Bell. My mother named me Marion. My father used it when he was angry. Everyone else calls me Ivy. Archie. Which was he using lately? Ivy neither. During the last month, he mostly issued instructions. Narrator. Ivy sat in the same carved chair she had occupied earlier, but her calm had begun to crack. Her hands were clasped in her lap, and her eyes kept moving toward the ceiling, as though the false voice might speak again. Rook remained standing. Rook, you argued with your father at 6:30. Ivy. Yes. Rook, about his intention to sell Bell House. Ivy. He did not merely intend to sell it. He had signed the first papers. Arthur Bell. He had no right to sell without consulting us. Narrator. Arthur spoke from the sofa, but Rook stopped him with a look. Rook, you will have your turn. Ivy. Bell House belonged to my mother's family before she married father. She made him promise it would remain with me. Archie. Was the promise written? Ivy. Number Archie. Then lawyers would describe it as a touching memory. Graham Stone. That is not entirely fair. Archie. You're right. Lawyers charge before describing it. Rook. Why did Silas want to sell? Ivy. He said the house was built upon stolen ground. That silenced the room, Rook. Explain. Ivy. He refused. He only said Bell House had been purchased with money that should have gone to the Riddle Street owners. He planned to sell it and use the proceeds to repay them. Archie. The families named in the missing amendment? Ivy. I suppose so. Rook. And you threatened to stop him. Ivy. I said I would challenge the sale. Rook. You also said he would leave the house only over your dead body. Ivy. It was an expression. Archie. Tonight, the wrong body ended up on the floor. Ivy looked directly at me. Ivy. I did not kill my father. Archie. Where were you at 8:56? The time recorded on the cylinder. Ivy. Upstairs. Rook. In your bedroom. Ivy. Yes. Rook. Alone. Ivy. Yes. Archie, where does the speaking tube in your bedroom lead? The color left her face. Ivy. I don't know. Rook. We found its mouth behind your fireplace screen. Ivy. I have never used it. Archie, someone used it to make the false door slam at 9:17. Ivy. Then someone entered my room. Rook. The door was locked when we searched it. Ivy. I locked it when I left. Rook. At what time? Ivy. After I heard the slam. Archie. So between 8:56 and 9:17, your door was open. Ivy. Yes. Rook. You could have prepared the mechanism. Ivy. So could anyone else. Archie. That is the most popular truth in the house. Narrator Rook moved to the second face. Ruth Hale had served as housekeeper at Bell House for 14 years. Silas had dismissed her that morning without notice. Ellen Shaw, the older household attendant, had taken charge of dinner and the lower rooms after Ruth left. Ruth was a square-built woman in her late 40s, with brown hair streaked by grey. Rain shone on the shoulders of her coat. She had been found in a lodging house, 3 streets away, and brought back by an officer who had not improved her temper. Ruth Hale, I was dismissed. That is not a crime. Rook, returning after dismissal may be. Ruth, I did not return. Rook, a witness saw you in Riddle Street at 8:30. Ruth, I have lived here 14 years. I know people on the street. Archie. Did you call on one? Ruth. Number, Rook. Then why were you here? Ruth glanced at Ivy. Ruth, I came to speak with Miss Bell. Ivy, you never spoke with me. Ruth, I changed my mind. Archie, before or after entering the house? Ruth, I did not enter. Rook, why did Silas dismiss you? Ruth, he accused me of opening his private desk. Rook, did you? Ruth, yes. Stone, that is an admission of theft. Ruth, I took nothing. Archie, what were you looking for? Ruth, a letter. Rook, from whom? Ruth, my husband. Narrator, Rook knew the answer, but let her continue. Ruth, Daniel Hale worked for the Bell Printing Company 20 years ago. He kept accounts when the Riddle Street properties were bought. He died 6 months later. Silas told everyone Daniel had stolen company. Money. Archie, did you believe him? Ruth, for 19 years. Rook, what changed? Ruth, last month I found a note Daniel had hidden inside an old prayer book. It said he had discovered false payments and feared Silas Bell would blame him. Arthur shifted on the sofa. Arthur, my brother never blamed Daniel Hale, the police did. Ruth, the police used records supplied by the Bell Company. Arthur, records my brother believed were true. Ruth, then why did he keep Daniel's final letter locked in his desk? Rook, you found it. Ruth, I saw the envelope. Silas caught me before I could read it. He dismissed me and burned it in the study fireplace. Archie, the grate was cold tonight. Ruth, he burned it this morning. Archie, did you see the ashes? Ruth, yes. Rook, where were you at 8:56? Ruth, walking toward the river. Rook, Anyon see you. Ruth, not that I know. Archie, did you still possess a key to Bell House? Ruth, Silas took my front door key. Archie, that wasn't my question. Ruth's jaw tightened. Ruth, there is an old pantry key beneath a loose brick in the yard. All the senior servants knew of it. Ellen Shaw stared at her. Ellen Shaw, that key was removed years ago. Ruth, number. I checked it last week. Archie, so you could have entered the pantry and reached the hidden passage. Ruth, I could have. I did not. Narrator. The third face belonged to Jasper Reed, a clockmaker with a narrow back, long fingers, and black eyes that made no apology for disliking Silas Bell. He placed a leather tool case upon the table. Jasper Reed. Search it. Rook, we already have. Jasper, then search it again if it brings you joy. Archie, is anything missing? Jasper, a winding spindle, 2 springs, and my patience. Rook, the iron box beneath the bedroom floor contained 4 tools once. Jasper, many boxes contain tools. Rook, it bears clock oil. Jasper, many clocks contain oil. Archie, you're destroying the romance of the trade. Jasper, there is no romance in repairing a rich man's clock after he refuses to pay. Rook, Silas stole one of your inventions, Jasper. He stole the design. The machine itself was too large. Archie, what machine? Jasper looked toward the study. Jasper, an automatic striking device. It could make a clock sound at any chosen time, even if the clock's hands showed another. Rook. Useful for staging a false time. Jasper. Useful for factories, schools, and railway offices. Murderers generally find their own uses. Rook. Silas patented the device under his name, Jasper. He claimed I developed it while employed by Bell Printing. I was never his employee. I sent him drawings because he promised to finance the work. He filed the patent and paid me nothing. Archie, how much was it worth? Jasper. Enough to keep me from repairing kitchen clocks for women who believe dust is a mechanical fault. Rook. You threatened Silas yesterday. Jasper. I told him I would expose him. Rook. You said, before tomorrow, every clock in your house will testify against you. Jasper. A poor choice of words. Archie. Under the circumstances, magnificent. Rook. You serviced the mantel clock 3 days ago. Jasper. Yes. Rook. You knew the speaking tubes and old bell cords ran through the walls. Jasper. I saw them. Rook. And where were you at 8:56? Jasper. Dining at the Crown Inn. Rook. Alone. Jasper. At a public table, 12 people saw me. Archie. When did you leave? Jasper. At 9:20:5. Rook. The innkeeper confirms it. Jasper. Then perhaps I may go. Archie. You may have built the mechanism earlier. Jasper. So may anyone who stole my drawings. Narrator. Jasper's alibi was strong, but not complete. It proved only that he had not stood beside Silas at 8:50:6. It did not prove his invention had remained at the workshop. The fourth face belonged to Owen Bell. He was Arthur's son and Silas's nephew, 20-9 years old, fair-haired, well-dressed, and so calm that he made the others look guilty by comparison. He sat with one ankle resting upon the opposite knee and watched Rook, as if the questioning were a game whose rules he had already read. Owen Bell. I was at dinner when the study door slammed. Rook. What dinner? Owen. The family dinner. Jeevy turned to him. Ivy, you were not at the table. Owen, not at the main table. Uncle Silas ordered me to eat in the breakfast room after we argued. Arthur, why didn't you say this earlier? Owen. No one asked me. Archie, the police collected everyone in the house. Owen. I left through the side door when I heard the commotion. I had no wish to be dragged into a family scandal. Rook. Yet here you are. Owen. Life disappoints us. Archie, who brought your meal? Owen. Ellen Shaw. Ellen frowned. Ellen. I placed a tray in the breakfast room at 8:40. Rook. Did you see him there? Ellen. Yes. Rook. After 8:40. Ellen. No. Owen. The tray was removed at 9:30. The food was eaten. Archie. A hungry alibi. Owen. A complete one. Archie. Food can't identify the mouth. Owen. You have no evidence I left the room. Rook. What did you argue about? Owen. Money. Arthur. Owen. Owen. There is no point pretending Uncle Silas controlled my trust. I asked for an advance, he refused. Archie. How much? Owen. $20,000. Archie. That's an ambitious breakfast. Owen. I owe certain people. Rook. Gambling debts. Owen. Among others. Rook. Silas threatened to remove you from his will. Owen. He threatened everyone with everything. It was his favorite exercise. Archie. Where were you at 8:50:6? Owen. Eating. Rook. Alone. Owen. Yes. Archie. Where were you at 9:17? Owen. Still eating. Then I heard the study door slam. The room became very quiet. I looked at Rook. He had heard it too. Archie. From the breakfast room. Owen. Yes. Archie. Describe the sound. Owen. A heavy slam. The door shook the wall. Archie. You're sure it was the study door? Owen. Everyone knows that door. It has a distinct sound. Rook. The breakfast room is behind the dining room, 2 halls away. Owen. The house carries sound. Archie, not that sound. Owen's calm remained, but only because he held it in place. Owen, what do you mean? Archie, the study door never slammed. A wooden block struck the back of a bookcase from the front hall. It sounded like a door. From the breakfast room, separated by two walls, it would have sounded like a faint knock, if you heard it at all. Owen, then I mistook it. Archie, you said the door shook the wall. Owen, an expression. Archie, you also knew the sound occurred at Joshitsi, Owen. The landing clock struck. Rook, the landing clock cannot be heard from the breakfast room when both doors are closed. We tested it. For the first time, Owen uncrossed his legs. Owen, perhaps one door was open. Ellen, both were closed. I closed them myself. Rook, your alibi places you in a room from which you could neither identify the false slam nor hear the clock that fixed its time. Owen, are you accusing me of murder? Rook, I'm accusing you of lying. Owen, that is not the same thing. Archie, no, but they've met. Narrator, Rook ordered. An officer to search the breakfast room again. Wolfe telephoned before the search was finished. I gave him the 4 motives: Ivy and the threatened sale of Bell House, Ruth Hale and her husband's ruined name, Jasper Reed and the stolen invention, Owen Bell and the unpaid debts. I also reported Owen's armored alibi. Wolfe. He volunteered that he heard the study door. Archie, with confidence. Wolfe. Then he knew the false event had been arranged. Archie, meaning he arranged it. Wolfe, not necessarily. Knowledge may be purchased, overheard, or inherited. What was served on his dinner tray? I asked Ellen. Ellen, cold beef, potatoes, bread, and apple cake. Archie, why? Wolfe, was the plate empty when collected? Ellen, yes. Wolfe, were the knife and fork used? Ellen's eyes narrowed as she remembered. Ellen, the fork was, the knife was clean. Archie, he could eat cold beef without a knife. Wolfe, he could, but he could not cut the cord, shave the wax, tear the blue paper, or stab Silas Bell with a fork, search for a narrow metal tool carrying food grease. Owen, this is absurd. Narrator, the officer returned from the breakfast room carrying a silver napkin ring. Inside it, wrapped in linen, was a slender steel clockmaker's spindle. One end was dark with dried blood. The other was smeared with the gravy from Owen's dinner. Rook held it beneath the lamp. Jasper Reed stared. Jasper, that is mine. Rook, missing from your tool case? Jasper, yes. Owen rose. Owen, it was planted. Archie, probably. Everyone looked at me. Rook, you think he is innocent? Archie, I think the weapon is too obliging. It carries Silas's blood, Jasper's ownership, and Owen's dinner. 3 accusations on one piece of steel. Rook, Owen lied. Archie, certainly. The question is whether he lied to hide murder or something else. Wolfe's voice. Mr. Goodwin. I had forgotten the telephone in my hand, Archie. Yes, Wolfe. The murderer has now supplied 4 suspects and 1 weapon. That is not evidence. It is an invitation. Rook, to what? Wolfe, to arrest the nephew before you find the ledger. Narrator, Owen Bell stood beside the untouched chair, his face no longer calm. 4 people had motives. Ivy feared the loss of her home. Ruth wanted her husband's name restored. Jasper wanted payment for his stolen invention. Owen needed money and had lied about where he was when the false door slammed. But only Owen had worn his alibi-like armor. Now someone had driven a bloody blade through it. Chapter 3, The Dressing Table Narrator. By 2 o'clock in the morning, Bell House had given us a false door slam, a false time of death, an empty iron box, a missing ledger, a stolen amendment, and a weapon so crowded with evidence that it ought to have charged admission. Elias Rook did not arrest Owen Bell. That disappointed Arthur Bell, frightened Owen, and annoyed Graham Stone, who had begun speaking of procedure in the tone of a man whose train was waiting. Rook. No one leaves the house. Stone, on what authority are you holding us? Rook. the authority of a murder, a concealed passage, and a blood-stained spindle found wrapped in your client's napkin. Stone, Owen is not my client. Owen Bell, not yet. Archie Goodwin. That may be the wisest thing you've said tonight. Narrator Owen sat rigidly in the drawing room. His polished calm had deserted him when the spindle appeared, but it had not gone far. He was already trying to call it back. Jasper Reed had identified the spindle as one stolen from his workshop 2 days earlier. Dr. Owen Hart confirmed that its width matched the wound beneath Silas Bell's left ear. The laboratory would decide whether the blood belonged to Silas, though nobody in the room was offering wagers against it. The gravy on the spindle was another matter. Owen insisted he had used only his fork during dinner because the beef had been sliced before it reached him. Ellen Shaw agreed that it had been. Someone could therefore have taken gravy from the abandoned plate after Owen left the breakfast room and spread it upon the weapon. The spindle pointed toward Owen. Its perfection pointed away from him. Rook sent 2 officers to search the house from roof to cellar. I went with him because Wolfe had instructed me to find the missing ledger, and the chances of finding it from a chair in the drawing room were poor. We began with Silas's bedroom. The room had been searched once, but a first search tells you where the furniture is. A second may tell you why. The bed had not been slept in. The wardrobe contained dark suits arranged by weight. A cabinet held medicine, old letters, and 3 unpaid bills from Jasper Reed. Beneath the carpet, the iron hatch remained open above the stone passage. Nothing explained Silas's recorded words. Silas's recorded voice. The name is hidden where Arthur will never look. Rook stood at the bedroom door, studying the hall. Rook. Where would Arthur Bell never look? Archie. Inside an account book, according to his brother. Rook. The ledger is missing. Archie. Maybe the name isn't in the ledger. Rook. Then what name? Archie. The man who received the false payment, the man Silas said never existed. Rook looked toward the closed door across the landing. Rook. Whose room is that? Ellen Shaw, Mrs. Bell's. Narrator. Ellen had followed us upstairs with the keys. At the mention of the room, her expression changed. Archie. Mrs. Bell is dead. Ellen. 6 years. Rook. The room has been kept locked. Ellen. Mr. Bell ordered that nothing be moved after her death. Archie. Did Arthur Bell enter it? Ellen. Never. Mr. Arthur and Mrs. Bell disliked one another. Archie. How much? Ellen. Enough to remain polite. Narrator. That is a large amount of dislike in a respectable family. Rook. Open it. Ellen hesitated. Ellen. Miss Ivy keeps the key. Archie. Wake her. Ellen. She is not asleep. Narrator. Ivy Bell appeared before Ellen reached the staircase. She wore a dark robe over her evening dress. Her eyes were tired but alert. Ivy Bell, you want Mother's room. Rook. Why do you say that? Ivy, you've searched every other room on this floor. Archie, logic at 2 in the morning, Wolfe would approve. Ivy removed a small brass key from a chain at her neck and opened the door. The room smelled faintly of lavender and closed windows. A pale cover lay across the bed. Books stood in careful rows beside a reading chair. On the wall hung a portrait of Mabel Bell painted when she was young. She had Ivy's grey eyes and none of Silas's severity. A dressing table stood between the windows. It was made of dark walnut, with a tall oval mirror and 6 small drawers. Silver brushes and glass bottles remained arranged upon it as if Mabel Bell might return after breakfast, and object to their positions. Ivy stopped at the threshold. Ivy, Father came here every Sunday morning. He stayed 10 minutes and never touched anything. Rook. How do you know? Ivy. I sometimes watched from the hall. Archie. Why? Ivy. Because he did not speak of her after she died. I wanted to know whether he remembered her. Archie. He did. Ivy. Remembering is not the same as regretting. Narrator. Rook searched the wardrobe while I examined the dressing table. The upper drawers held gloves, hair ribbons, sealed letters, and dried flowers. The middle drawer contained folded black silk. I pulled it open fully. It stopped sooner than its depth allowed. Archie, Inspector. Rook came over. The drawer was 20 inches deep on the outside, but only 14 within. I removed it and found a thin walnut panel fitted behind the lining. Its edges were too straight to be part of the original construction. A pressure catch hid beneath the left runner. When I pressed it, the false back fell forward. Behind it rested a short brass key wrapped in a strip of black silk. No one spoke for a moment. Rook put on gloves and lifted the packet. The silk had been folded 3 times and secured with a single black thread. Unlike the cord used to lock the study door, this material was broad, smooth, and old. Dust lay in the folds. The key was less than 2 inches long. Its bow was oval, its stem hollow, and its 2 teeth were cut at unequal angles. A faint number had been stamped near the end. Rook. The house number, Archie, or the 13th key in a set. Ivy had entered the room. She stared at the open compartment. Ivy, Mother called that drawer the place where endings sleep. Rook, what did she mean? Ivy, I never knew. When I was a child, I once saw her lock something inside it. I asked whether it was jewelry. She said, no, Ivy. Jewelry begins trouble. This is where endings sleep. Archie, did your father know about the false back? Ivy, he knew everything about this house. Archie, that's what owners believe. Rook, did you know? Ivy, not how to open it. Rook, did your Uncle Arthur? Ivy, he never entered Mother's room, not even when she was dying. Narrator. Rook examined the key under the lamp. Its teeth were bright along one edge, as if it had been used more recently than the dust on the silk suggested. Rook, this was wrapped years ago, removed, used, and wrapped again. Archie, or rubbed against another piece of metal while hidden. Rook, we'll test every lock in the house. Archie, the killer may have done that already. Narrator. The search occupied nearly an hour. The brass key fitted neither the study door nor the iron hatch. It did not turn the locks of Silas's desk, the document cabinet, the wall safe, the wardrobes, the old trunks in the attic, or the wine room below the kitchen. It was too small for the doors and too oddly cut for the ordinary boxes. Jasper Reed examined it without touching. Jasper Reed, not a household key. Rook, how can you tell? Jasper, the stem is hollow. The teeth do not lift pins. They release 2 catches at once. Archie, what kind of lock uses that? Jasper, a machine housing, a clock case, a counting device, perhaps one of the early printing controls. Arthur Bell, the printing works contains hundreds of such locks. Rook, would this key fit one? Arthur, I have no idea. Jasper, Silas had me repair several old factory instruments. I never saw this key. Narrator. Owen Bell stood near the doorway while Jasper spoke. When Rook unwrapped the key again, Owen glanced at it. Then he looked away too quickly. It was not a dramatic movement. Dramatic movements are often useless because people prepare them. This was the small refusal of a man whose eyes had recognized something before his mind could stop them. Rook saw it. Rook, Mr. Bell. Owen, what? Rook, you know the key. Owen, number. Rook, you reacted to it. Owen, I looked at it. Archie, then you looked at the ceiling as if the key had insulted you. Owen, it is an old key. I have seen hundreds. Rook, where? Owen, at the printing works. In this house, in shops. Rook, this one bears the number 13. Owen, so does the front door. Archie, you noticed the number from across the room. Owen's face tightened. The stamped number was small. I had not seen it until Rook held the key beneath the lamp. Owen, Jasper mentioned it. Jasper, I did not. Owen, then someone else did. Rook, no one did. Narrator. Owen moved toward the hall. Rook blocked him. Rook, where have you seen it? Owen, I haven't. Rook. The weapon was hidden with your dinner. You lied about hearing the study door. Now you lie about a key found in a secret drawer. You are making patience difficult. Owen, arrest me or let me pass. Rook, I can arrest you for withholding evidence. Owen, then do it. Archie, that would be convenient. Owen turned toward me. Owen, for whom, Archie? The person who planted the spindle. Once you're in a cell, the police stop asking who wanted you there. The anger in his face gave way to uncertainty. Archie, you didn't kill Silas. Arthur Goodwin. Archie, I didn't say he was innocent. I said he didn't kill Silas. Rook, on what basis? Archie, he knew about the false slam. If Owen built the trick, he would know not to claim he heard an oak door shake the wall from the breakfast room. His lie was clumsy because he repeated a story someone gave him. Rook? Who? I looked at Owen. Archie, that's what he's afraid to tell us. Owen, you know nothing about it. Archie, I know you need $20,000. I know Silas refused you. I know someone offered you another way to get it. You agreed to sit in the breakfast room, eat dinner, and say you heard the study door at Joshua. Owen said nothing. Archie, you were paid to support the false time. Arthur, that is absurd. Archie, probably. People do absurd things for $20,000. Rook, who paid you? Owen, no one. Rook, who told you what to say? Owen, no one. Rook, then explain the key. Owen looked toward his father. Arthur's heavy face held a warning I could not read. Owen, I cannot. Archie cannot or will not. Owen both. Narrator Rook ordered Owen taken to the library under guard. Arthur protested. Graham Stone began describing legal boundaries again. Ivy remained beside her mother's dressing table, one hand resting upon the false drawer. When the room had emptied, she spoke quietly. Ivy, Owen was in here last week. Rook, you said Arthur never entered. You said nothing about Owen. Ivy, I didn't know it mattered. I found him in the hall outside Mother's room. He claimed he was looking for Father. Archie, was the door locked? Ivy, yes. Archie, could Owen have a key, Ivy? Only mine exists. Rook, keys can be copied. Ivy touched the chain at her neck. Ivy, I left it on my dressing table during breakfast 2 weeks ago. Owen was staying in the house. Archie, how long was it out of your possession? Ivy, perhaps 20 minutes. Narrator, Rook telephoned his men and ordered them to search Owen's rooms. While he spoke, I studied Mabel Bell's dressing table. The black silk had protected the brass key for years, but the polished edge showed that someone had used it recently. If Owen had copied Ivy's room key, he might have entered, opened the false back, and borrowed the brass key. The question was what he had unlocked. I called Wolfe. He answered after the 4th ring with the injured dignity of a man whose breakfast schedule had been threatened by murder. Archie, we found a brass key behind a false back in Mabel Bell's dressing table. Hollow stem, 2 angled teeth. Number 13 stamped near the end. It fits nothing in the house. Jasper says it belongs to a machine housing. Owen recognized it and refuses to explain. Wolfe, what wrapped it? Archie, old black silk. Wolfe, cut or torn. I inspected the edges. Archie, torn. Wolfe, from what? Archie, a dress perhaps. Ivy heard me. Ivy. Mother wore a black silk gown the night Daniel Hale was accused. I repeated that. Wolfe, indeed, was Mabel Bell involved in the company accounts? Ivy answered before I could ask. Ivy, she kept Father's private records before Clara Webb became his secretary. Wolfe, then the key was not hidden from Silas. It was hidden with his consent or at his direction. Archie, why in Mabel's room? Wolfe, because Arthur Bell would never look there. The recorded words returned to me, Silas's recorded voice. The name is hidden where Arthur will never look. Archie, the name was hidden with the key. Wolfe, possibly behind the lock it opens. Archie, we need to find the lock. Wolfe, no. Find what Owen did during the 20 minutes when Ivy's room key was unattended. The destination will follow. Narrator, Rook returned from the telephone in the hall. Rook, my men found a pawn ticket in Owen's coat, dated 12 days ago. Archie, for what? Rook, a brass key. Ivy's hand left the dressing table. Rook, The ticket says he delivered it to a metalworker on River Lane to have a copy made. Archie, a copy of which key? Rook, the description includes a hollow stem and 2 angled teeth. Narrator Owen had not copied Ivy's bedroom key. He had entered Mabel's room another way, found the false drawer, removed the brass key, and ordered a duplicate. Then he had returned the original to its black silk before anyone noticed. Rook looked down at the key marked 13 Rook. If Owen had a copy, where is it? The answer came from the hall. An officer entered, carrying a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a bright new brass key officer, found in Jasper Reed's coat pocket. Jasper stared at it. Jasper, that is not mine. Archie, of course not. Jasper, Summoning put it there. Archie, naturally. Rook held the old key and its shining copy beneath the lamp. Their teeth were identical. Owen had recognized the original Jasper, now possessed the copy. Mabel had hidden the key where endings slept. And someone in Bell House had begun moving those endings from pocket to pocket, making certain that each one pointed toward a different guilty face. Chapter 4. The Wrong Question Narrator. The new brass key found in Jasper Reed's coat was too bright, too clean, and too conveniently guilty. Jasper stood beneath the drawing room chandelier while Elias Rook held the evidence bag before him. Jasper Reed, I have never seen that key. Rook, you identified the original as a machine key. Jasper, because it is one. Rook, the copy was found in your pocket. Jasper, then someone put it there. Archie Goodwin, that explanation is getting crowded. Owen says someone planted your spindle with his dinner. You say someone planted Owen's copied key in your coat. If this continues, we'll have to arrest the cloakroom. Narrator. Jasper's black eyes moved from me to Owen Bell. Owen stood near the fireplace under the guard of a uniformed officer. He had admitted ordering the copy but refused to explain why. Jasper had admitted nothing except that the key was unusual. Rook placed the old key and the new copy side by side upon the table. The copy reproduced every visible feature, the hollow stem, the 2 unequal teeth, and the number 13 stamped near the collar. But the copy had a sharper tip and square shoulders. The original's end was blunt. Its shoulders had been worn into shallow curves by repeated pressure. A thin stain circled its collar. Rook touched the stain with a white cloth. It left a pale brown mark. Rook, oil, Jasper, clock, oil, Rook, you recognize it. Jasper, any repairman would. Archie, the house contains a stopped clock, an automatic striking device, a clockmaker's spindle, and now a key-wearing clock oil. That's a lot of time for one murder. Jasper, it is not an ordinary key. Rook, then what is it? Jasper, I have told you. It belongs to a machine. Rook, which machine? Jasper looked toward the windows. Rain ran down the glass in wavering lines. The storm had weakened, but Riddle Street remained dark and wet beyond the curtains. Jasper, I don't know. Archie, that wasn't your first answer. Jasper, it is my final one. Rook, you are afraid. Jasper, I am standing in a murdered man's house while the police display stolen property taken from my pocket. Caution is not fear. Archie, fear is caution after it learns your name. Jasper's mouth tightened. Rook, who are you protecting, Jasper? No one. Rook, Owen Bell. Jasper, certainly not. Jasper, number Rook, yourself. Jasper, Inspector, if I knew what the key controlled, I would tell you. Archie, that sentence was polished before you said it. Narrator Rook studied him for several seconds, then ordered the officers to keep Jasper and Owen in separate rooms. The old key returned to the evidence table. I unfolded its black silk wrapping beneath a stronger lamp. It was not a neat strip cut from a hem. One edge was smooth, but the other had been torn. Near the middle, a crescent-shaped piece was missing. The cloth also carried a line of reddish, brown dust. Rook, blood? Archie, too dry and loose. Brick, rust, or old plaster. Rook called for an evidence brush. The dust was collected in a paper fold. Beneath it, the silk showed a faint grey impression like the edge of a gear. Ivy Bell stood in the doorway. Ivy Bell. That silk came from my mother's gown. Rook. You are certain? Ivy. She wore it only once. Archie. The night Daniel Hale was accused? Ivy. Yes. There was a reception at the Bell Printing Works. Father announced that money had been stolen from the property account. Daniel Hale was arrested before midnight. Ruth Hale had entered behind her. At the sound of her husband's name, she stopped. Ruth Hale. Mabel Bell spoke to Daniel that night. Ivy turned. Ivy, you never told me. Ruth. Your mother came to the servants' hall after the police took him. She asked whether he had left any papers with me. Archie. Had he? Ruth. Number at least. I believe not. Rook. What was Mrs. Bell wearing? Ruth. A black silk gown, the skirt was torn. Ivy looked at the crescent missing from the wrapping. Ivy. Mother said she caught it on a nail. Ruth. She lied. The room went still. Rook. How do you know? Ruth. Because there were no nails where I saw her coming from. Archie. Where was that? Ruth. The old clock room at the printing works. Jasper Reed's workshop face had already told us the key belonged to a machine. Ruth had now supplied a room full of them. Rook. What is the clock room? Arthur Bell. Nothing important. Narrator. Arthur Bell had arrived from the hall, in time to answer too quickly. Rook looked at him. Rook. I asked Mrs. Hale. Ruth. The workers called it the clock room. It contained the master time recorder, the shift bells, and the machines that counted the printing presses. Every employee entered through it. Archie. Is it still there? Arthur. The room was sealed after a fire 19 years ago. Rook. What caused the fire? Arthur. An electrical fault. Ruth. There was no electrical fault. Arthur. You were not present. Ruth. My husband was. He came home with burns on his hands. Arthur faced her. Arthur. Daniel caused the fire while destroying the records he had falsified. Ruth. That was the story your company gave the police. Archie. And now we have a key wrapped in Mabel Bell's torn gown, carrying reddish dust, hidden after the same night. Ivy picked up the edge of the silk without touching it directly. Ivy. Mother came home after the reception and locked herself in her bedroom. She would not let father enter until morning. Rook. Did she ever explain why? Ivy. Number, but after that night she stopped attending company dinners. She and father slept in separate rooms. Arthur exhaled sharply. Arthur. Mabel was ill. You are turning family grief into evidence. Archie. Murder has poor manners. Narrator. Rook ordered an officer to telephone the printing works and seal the old clock room. Arthur objected that the building was private property. Rook informed him that private property became less private when it supplied blood-stained weapons. While they argued, I called Wolfe. Fritz answered and told me Wolfe was in the plant rooms. Since disturbing him among the orchids could bring on a lecture longer than the investigation, I left a message and returned to the key. Rook spent the morning trying it in every mechanical lock at Bell House. We began with the mantel clock in the study. The hollow stem entered the winding holes, but would not turn. It was too narrow for the main spring and too wide for the striking spring. We tried the long clock on the landing, the kitchen clock, the small clock in Mabel's bedroom, the iron recorder connected to the speaking tubes, and a brass household bell controller in the pantry. Nothing accepted it. We tried Silas's wall safe again. Although the teeth were wrong, we tried the locked drawers of his desk, the iron hatch, the document cabinets, the trunks, the wine room, 3 sewing boxes, 2 cash boxes, an old music machine, and a metal case containing deeds. By noon we had tested 63 locks. By 4 o'clock the number had reached 112. At 6, Wolfe telephoned. Wolfe, you are still putting the key into holes. Archie, Rook has developed a personal relationship with every lock in Bell House. Wolfe. Foolish. Rook. I can hear you. Wolfe. Good Mr. Rook. What is the shape of the wear? Rook took the telephone. Rook. The tip is blunt. Both shoulders are rounded. The collar carries clock oil. Wolfe. Are the teeth worn? Rook. Very little, Wolfe. Then the teeth do not operate the principal resistance. Rook, meaning. Wolfe, the key was not turned against a lock. It was pushed against a spring. Rook, Jasper Reed says it belongs to a machine. Wolfe, Mr. Reed knows more than he says. Bring him here. Rook, to your office. Wolfe, yes. Rook, you could come to Bell House. There was a pause. Wolfe, Mr. Goodwin, explain reality to him. I took the telephone. Archie, reality weighs 1/7 of a ton, keeps 10,000 orchids, and does not travel for the convenience of policemen. Wolfe, satisfactory. Bring Mr. Reed at 9. The line went dead. Narrator, Rook did not bring Jasper at 9. Jasper refused to go without legal advice. Graham Stone volunteered too much of it, and the laboratory telephoned with 3 results at once. The blood on the spindle belonged to Silas Bell. The gravy came from Owen's dinner. The reddish dust on the silk was brick powder, mixed with dried animal glue, both common in the old Bell printing works. The black thread used to operate the false door slam did not match Mabel's silk. It matched the cord sold with Jasper Reed's automatic striking device. That was enough for Rook to spend another 3 hours questioning Jasper. It gained him nothing. At 11:40 that night, nearly 27 hours after the murder, we returned to the study. The body was gone, but its absence had not made the room honest. The stopped clock remained on the mantel at Jiu-Jitsu. The false striking block remained exposed behind the bookcase. Silas's cup of altered tea had been removed for testing. Rook placed the brass key on the desk beside the stopped clock. Rook, we have asked what it opens. Perhaps we should ask what it closes. I looked at him, Archie. You saved that one. Rook, I earned it. The study door opened. Jasper Reed stood there with an officer behind him. His face was grey. Jasper, you are asking the wrong question, Rook. Then give us the right one. Jasper approached the desk. He stared at the key but did not touch it. Jasper, that key does not open a machine. Archie, what does it do? Jasper, it stops one. Rook, the mantel clock. Jasper, no, something larger. Archie, the master time recorder at the printing works. Fear passed over Jasper's face. This time he did not conceal it. Jasper, the master recorder did more than ring shift bells. It counted each press cycle and stamped the operator's code upon a paper roll. Every alteration to the property ledgers was entered through a numbered control. Rook, number 13. Jasper nodded. Jasper. Control 13 closed the recording drum. Once closed, the drum could be removed, but its seal could not be reset without breaking. Archie, so this key did not unlock a compartment. Jasper, it ended a record. Rook, why was Mabel Bell carrying it on the night Daniel Hale was accused? Jasper, because someone used Control 13 to stop the recorder before the false payments were entered. Rook, who? Jasper looked toward the hall. Jasper, ask Arthur Bell. A floorboard creaked outside. I reached the doorway in 3 strides. The hall was empty, but the front door stood open. Rain blew across the marble floor. From somewhere above us came the sound of breaking glass. We ran upstairs to Mabel Bell's room. The dressing table mirror had been smashed. Its drawers had been pulled out and emptied. The false back lay broken on the carpet. Written across the pale wall in black oil were 5 words. The ending must remain asleep. Rook stared at the message. Archie, summon a herd, Jasper. Rook, Arthur, Archie, maybe, but someone else knew the phrase Ivy's mother used. Behind the broken mirror, we found a crescent, Jan-shaped scrap of old black silk. It fitted the tear in the key's wrapping exactly. A dark stain covered one side. This time, it was not brick dust. It was blood. Chapter Wu, The Raven in the Wall. Narrator. The blood upon the crescent of black silk was 19 years old. The laboratory established that much before breakfast, it also established that the blood did not belong to Silas Bell, Mabel Bell, or Daniel Hale. That left a wide field. but Elias Rook preferred a field to a wall. Rook. Old blood, old silk, old key. The murder may be new, but its machinery was built years ago. Archie Goodwin. That will please Wolfe. He likes a crime to have matured before serving. Narrator. We stood in Mabel Bell's bedroom, while 2 police technicians examined the message painted behind the broken mirror. The ending must remain asleep. The black oil used for the words matched the oil around the collar of the brass key. Both contained graphite and a trace of red mineral dust. Rook had the samples sent to the city laboratory. I telephoned Wolfe and gave him the results. Wolfe. Where else was the red dust found? Archie. On the silk, in the iron box beneath the floor, and now in the oil behind Mabel's mirror. Wolfe. Not in the study. I considered it. A faint reddish line had marked the wood beneath the forced bolt socket. We had assumed it came from the torn doorframe. Archie, possibly beneath the study bolt. Wolfe. Then stop searching drawers, examine the wall. Archie. Which wall? Wolfe. The wall containing the bolt, naturally. Dust does not travel through brick for amusement. The line went dead. Rook. Naturally. Archie. When Wolfe says it, it means we should have thought of it yesterday. Narrator. The study door occupied the eastern wall of Bell House. Its bolt entered a socket fixed to the doorframe. Behind that frame lay a strip of brickwork, separating the study from a shallow exterior alcove. The alcove was accessible from a narrow side path between Bell House and number 15. Rainwater had gathered there in black pools. Dead ivy covered most of the wall. Above the study window, a carved wooden raven projected from the brick. Its wings were folded, its head bent downward, and its long beak pointed toward the doorframe. The carving was weathered but not neglected. Fresh oil darkened the hinge beneath one wing. Archie, a decorative bird, with lubricated feathers. Rook, who maintains the outside carvings. Ellen Shaw. No one. Mr. Bell would not allow them removed, but he never paid to repair them. Archie. Then someone has been feeding this one. Narrator. Ellen stood beneath an umbrella held by an officer. Ivy and Arthur watched from the drawing-room window. Jasper Reed had been brought from the library under guard after spending the remainder of the night refusing questions. Rook climbed a short police ladder and examined the raven. The lower half of its beak moved. Behind it was a narrow brass socket shaped exactly like the old key. Red dust lined its edges. Rook. Bring the key. Narrator. An officer returned with the evidence case. Rook compared the key to the socket without inserting it. Its 2 uneven teeth matched the twin catches inside the raven's beak. Jasper stepped forward. Jasper Reed. Do not turn it. Rook looked down from the ladder. Rook. Why? Jasper. Because you do not know what it controls. Archie. You do, Jasper. I know what it resembles. Rook. The master time recorder at the printing works. Jasper. Its control key was used as the model. Rook. You said the key stopped a machine. Jasper. It does. Archie. Which machine? Jasper's face was rigid. Jasper. Silas called it the Raven lock. Arthur Bell pushed open the drawing. Room window. Arthur Bell. There is no such thing. Jasper looked toward him. Jasper. You paid for the first design. Arthur left the window. A moment later he came out through the side door without a coat. Arthur. That is a lie, Jasper. Your signature is on the workshop order. Arthur. Silas used my name. Archie. That signature has been busy. It appears upon property accounts, workshop orders, and anything else nobody wants to own. Rook. When was the Raven lock built? Jasper. 18 years ago. Rook. The year Daniel Hale was accused. Jasper nodded. Jasper. Silas asked my father to construct a locking system that could operate after a delay. My father was the Bell Company's mechanic. I was his apprentice. Rook. Why would Silas need such a thing, Jasper? He said the study held confidential printing contracts. He wanted to leave the room and have the door secure itself after he crossed the hall. Archie. A key outside the house starts a mechanism inside it. Jasper. The Raven hides the control socket. Turning the key wins a spring behind the wall. Rook. How long is the delay, Jasper? It was designed for 1 minute. Archie. Approximately the time needed to leave the side path, enter through the pantry, cross the hidden passage, and walk out of the study. Jasper stared at me. Archie, we've been measuring. Rook, why did you conceal this? Jasper, because my father built it illegally. The fire inspector had forbidden mechanical bolts on occupied rooms. If the spring failed, a person inside could be trapped. Archie, your father is dead, Jasper. He died 2 weeks after completing it. Rook, how? Jasper, a fall at the printing works. Ruth Hale drew in a breath. Ruth Hale, the same week Daniel was arrested. Jasper, yes. Archie, the blood on Mabel's silk. Jasper looked at the crescent scrap held inside its clear sleeve. Jasper, it may be my father's. Rook, how would his blood reach Mrs. Bell's gown? Jasper, I don't know. Arthur, this is fantasy. The carving is decorative. The socket may have controlled an old servant's bell. Rook, then you won't object to a test. Arthur, the mechanism could be dangerous. Archie, you just said it didn't exist. Arthur closed his mouth. Narrator, Rook ordered everyone out of the study. 2 officers entered the exterior alcove. Another waited in the front hall with a stopwatch. Before testing the device, we examined the study again. The black cord found beneath the bolt did not run through the gap under the door. As we had first assumed, a remaining strand disappeared through a drilled channel inside the frame. The pale wax beneath the bolt was not meant to hold a hand-pulled loop. It reduced friction as the cord drew the brass bar sideways. Behind the torn socket, concealed within the wall, an iron lever connected the cord to a vertical rod. That rod rose toward the Raven. The locked room had been explained too quickly. The thread beneath the door had invited us to imagine a killer standing in the hall and pulling the bolt. The true force had come from inside the wall. Rook returned to the ladder. Rook, clear. Officer in hall, clear. Rook, start the watch when I turn it. He inserted the old brass key into the Raven's beak. It entered smoothly until its blunt tip met resistance. Rook pushed harder. The rounded shoulders pressed against 2 hidden springs. The key did not unlock the socket. It closed 2 catches. Rook turned it a quarter circle. A muffled click sounded behind the bricks. Then another deep within the wall. An iron gear began moving. Officer in hall. Watch started. Narrator. The clicks continued at 1-second intervals. Rook withdrew the key. The mechanism did not stop. Jasper, once engaged, it must finish. Archie, what does the key close? Jasper, a spring circuit. Turning it shuts the release gate. The spring then spends its stored force. Archie, so your statement was exact. The key stops the control from remaining open. Jasper nodded. At 30 seconds, the Raven's head lifted slightly. At 40 Gen 5, something moved inside the study wall. At 60, the loose study door trembled. Rook and I stood in the hall, watching through the opening. The damaged frame prevented the door from closing fully, so an officer had temporarily braced the torn socket in its original position. The clicks quickened, 60 Gen 8, 60 Gen 9, 70. The study door pulled itself shut. The inner bolt slid across and dropped into its socket with a heavy metal snap. Rook. The room was never locked by a man. It was locked by a clock. Narrator, the sentence remained in the hall after he spoke it. The killer had not needed thread beneath the door. He had not needed to remain near the study after leaving Silas Bell. The brass key had started the Raven lock from outside. 70 seconds later, the machine had drawn the door shut and dropped the bolt. But the door heard at Jodenschützifen was still false. That sound had come from the wooden block behind the bookcase, operated through the speaking tube. The real study door had closed much earlier, shortly after Silas's recording ended at Bar Wushilil. The room had told 2 separate lies. The Raven lock lied about how the killer left. The false slam lied about when. Rook reset the device and timed it again. The result was 70 seconds exactly. Jasper watched from the side path. Rook. Could the delay be changed? Jasper. Not without replacing the gear. Rook. Could it have been operated without this key? Jasper. The copied key would work. Everyone looked toward Owen Bell. Owen Bell. I did not turn it. Rook. You ordered the copy? Owen. Yes, Rook. Why? Owen's face tightened. Owen. My uncle asked me to. Arthur turned on him. Arthur. Silas. Owen. Yes. Archie. When? Owen. 12 days ago. He gave me Ivy's room key and told me where Mabel's key was hidden. He said the original must remain in the drawer, so I was to copy it and return it. Ivy, father gave you my key. Owen, he took it from your dressing table during breakfast. Archie, what did Silas do with the copy? Owen, I delivered it to him. Rook, yet it was found in Jasper's pocket. Owen, then someone took it from Uncle Silas. Archie, why didn't you tell us? Owen, because he paid me $5,000 and promised the rest if I followed his instructions on the night of the family dinner. Rook, what instructions? Owen looked at the study door. Owen, I was to eat alone in the breakfast room, at Joe Denschitzifen if anyone asked. I was to say, I heard the study door slam. Ivy, father told you to support the false time. Owen, yes. Rook, why would a man arrange a false time for his own murder? Owen, he did not say he expected to die. He said he intended to frighten someone into confessing. Archie. Who? Owen. He refused to name them. Narrator. That changed the shape of the case. The false slam had not necessarily been prepared by the murderer. Silas himself had ordered Owen to confirm it. He had arranged the room to lie before anyone killed him. Rook turned to Jasper. Rook, did Silas ask you to repair the Raven lock? Jasper. Yes, 3 days ago, when I serviced the mantel clock. Rook, you said nothing. Jasper. He threatened to expose my father's part in building it. Archie. You repaired a machine you knew might be used illegally. Jasper, I disconnected the final spring. It should not have worked. Rook looked up at the carved raven rook. But it did, Jasper. Summon and reconnected it. Archie. Summon a familiar with the design. Jasper. Only 3 men knew the full mechanism. My father, Silas Bell, and Arthur Bell. Arthur laughed once. Without amusement, Arthur. Both convenient witnesses are dead. Ruth, and you are not. Narrator, the laboratory telephoned with another result. The blood on Mabel's torn silk belonged to Jasper's father. An old medical record supplied the match. According to the official report, Jasper's father had fallen from a loading platform at the printing works. His blood should never have reached Mabel Bell's gown or the hidden key. Rook walked back into the study and placed the key beside the clock stopped at Joshitsi. One had controlled the locking machine. The other had supported the false time. Silas Bell had prepared both. Archie, he built a trap. Rook. Yes, Archie, but the person he meant to trap learned about it. Rook, and turned it against him. Narrator, from the exterior alcove came a sharp wooden crack. We ran outside. The carved raven's head had split open inside its hollow body. Behind the key socket lay a tightly rolled sheet of paper protected by oilcloth. Rook removed it carefully. It was part of the missing property ledger. Across the top, in Mabel Bell's handwriting, were 4 words. Control 13, second record. Beneath them stood a list of payments made 19 years earlier. The first was to Daniel Hale. The second was to Jasper's father. The third carried no name, only a set of initials. Arthur Bell stared at the page. Arthur, Silas put that there. Archie, certainly. Arthur, to frame me. Rook, perhaps. Archie. But he expected the Raven to remain closed until someone turned Mabel's key. Narrator, Rook examined the bottom of the ledger fragment. A final line had been added in fresh ink. The person who starts the clock will return to stop it. At that moment, the mechanism inside the wall began clicking again. No one stood near the Raven. The key was still lying beside the clock inside the study. Chapter 6, 70 seconds. Narrator. The Raven lock began clicking while its key lay inside the study. That should have been impossible. Elias Rook reached the exterior alcove first. The split wooden Raven hung open above him, exposing its wires and gears. No hand touched the socket. No second key appeared in it. Still the mechanism counted. 40, 3, 40, 40, 5. Jasper Reed climbed the ladder, listened for 3 seconds, and reached beneath the raven's broken wing. Jasper Reed, this is not the locking spring. Rook. Then what is it, Jasper? The reset gear. Archie Goodwin. Does it lock the door, Jasper? Number it returns the cord and raises the bolt after a test. Rook, why did it start? Jasper pointed to a small iron lever exposed inside the carving. Jasper, when you removed the ledger roll, you released it. The clicking ended. Inside the study, the bolt lifted and the black cord withdrew into the wall. The damaged door moved inward by an inch, Archie, so the raven was clearing its throat, not repeating the crime. Rook, can the reset be started from anywhere else? Jasper, only here. Archie, good, one impossible event per room is enough. Narrator Rook did not smile. He had spent nearly 2 days taking apart Bell House, and Bell House kept producing more parts. The laboratory's report on Silas Bell's tea arrived an hour later. It changed the murder. The dark liquid contained starch as we had suspected, but the starch had not been added merely to create an old-looking skin. It concealed a bitter mineral poison. The dose was sufficient to kill a healthy man within 3 minutes. Dr. Owen Hart read the report twice. Dr. Hart, then the wound behind the ear was not fatal. Rook, you said it matched the spindle. Hart, it does. But the bleeding was limited. If the poison had already stopped his heart, the wound was inflicted after death. Archie, the murderer, poisoned him, then used Jasper's spindle to make the death look like a stabbing. Hart, yes. Rook, why? Archie, because a blood-stained weapon can be planted in Owen's dinner. A cup of poison is less cooperative. Rook looked at Dr. Hart. Rook, you examined the body before the laboratory test. Why didn't you detect poison? Hart, there was no odor. The skin showed no clear discoloration. The puncture offered an obvious cause. Archie, obvious causes should be required to carry licenses. Narrator. Ellen Shaw had served the tea at 9:05, but Silas's recorder proved that he had confronted his visitor at 8:56. One of those facts had to be false. Ellen was brought to the study. Rook, did you personally pour the tea at 9:05? Ellen Shaw, I prepared it in the kitchen and carried the tray to the hall. Rook, who took it into the study? Ellen hesitated. Ellen, Mr. Bell met me outside the dining room. He said he would carry it himself. Rook, which Mr. Bell? Ellen, Mr. Owen. Every head turned toward Owen. Owen Bell. Uncle Silas asked me to. Ellen, you said he had. Owen, he did. Archie, when? Owen, at dinner. He told me that at 9:05 I was to leave the tray outside the study, knock once, and return to the breakfast room. Rook, did you enter the study? Owen number. Rook, did Silas take the tray from you? Owen number, I left it on the floor. Archie, then how did it reach the desk? Owen, I don't know. Rook, you have lied about the false slam and hidden your part in copying the key. Why should we believe you now? Owen, because if I had carried poisoned tea into that room, I would not admit touching the tray. Archie, that has the smell of logic, though not enough to clear the air. Narrator. Rook ordered the tray examined again. A faint line of red brick dust marked its underside. The same dust had been found in the wall passage and on Mabel's silk. Someone had taken the tray through the hidden passage. The study's false time had misled us in both directions. The tea had not been served to Silas at 9:05. It had been prepared earlier, carried through the wall, and placed upon his desk before 8:56. At 9:05, Owen had set down a second tray in the hall to create a witnessed serving time. That second tray had vanished during the confusion. Rook, who prepared the first cup? Ellen, not me. Archie, was tea already made before dinner? Ellen, a pot was kept warm in the pantry. Mr. Bell sometimes drank it before meals. Rook, who could reach it? Ellen, every one in the household. Rook and Ruth Hale knew the pantry key. Ruth Hale. I was not in the house. Archie, we've heard that chorus. Narrator. The poison had been stored in a blue glass bottle once kept in Silas's medicine cabinet. Dr. Hart identified it as an old treatment for rats. The bottle was missing. I telephoned Wolfe from the study. Archie. Cause of death is poison in the tea. The spindle wound came after death. Owen delivered a second tray at 9:05 under Silas's instructions, but the poisoned cup was already on the desk before 8:50:6. Wolfe. Did Silas drink voluntarily? Archie. The recorder captured a chair scraping, then a knock. No struggle before silence. Wolfe. The visitor may have arrived while he drank. What is the stated action of the poison? Dr. Hart took the telephone. Hart, 1 to 3 minutes. Weakness first, then loss of breath and heart failure. Wolfe. Would he remain capable of speech? Hart, briefly. Wolfe. Then the recorded words, "You came early," may refer to the poison's effect, not the visitor's arrival. Hart. What? Wolfe. Play the cylinder again. Narrator. Rook placed the wax cylinder on the machine. Static whispered. Silas's recorded voice. The property ledger proves the payment was false. If anything happens to me, the name is hidden where Arthur will never look. A chair scraped. Silas drew a sharp breath. Silas's recorded voice. You came early. A faint voice answered. Then came the sharp knock we had mistaken for the attack. This time, knowing what to hear, we heard something else beneath it. A cup struck wood. Silas had been speaking to the poison. It had taken effect earlier than expected. The faint reply belonged to a person already in the room, but the words remained unclear. Wolfe. The poisoner intended Silas to die after leaving the study. Rook. Why? Wolfe. Because the trap was Silas's. He planned to stage his disappearance or apparent attack at Joshua. The poisoner knew the plan and altered its result. Silas expected to be alive when the false slam sounded. Archie. Instead he died before the Raven lock closed. Wolfe. Precisely. Narrator. We reconstructed the 70 seconds. The poisoner entered the study before 8:50:6, carrying the poisoned tea through the hidden passage. After placing it on the desk, he allowed Silas to begin his recorded statement. Silas drank and felt the first weakness. When he collapsed, the poisoner drove Jasper's spindle beneath his ear. The act supplied a false weapon that could later be planted against Owen. The killer took the blue amendment and searched for the property ledger. Unable to find the entire book, the killer left through the hidden passage into the pantry. From there, the killer reached the exterior alcove and used Mabel's brass key to wind the Raven lock. Then the 70 seconds began. Rook timed the route, from the Raven to the pantry door, 13 seconds, through the pantry and up the concealed wall stairs. 20:1 seconds. From the iron hatch to Mabel's bedroom, 9 seconds. 40:3 seconds in all. That left 20:7 seconds to return the key to the dressing table and wrap it in black silk before the Raven lock pulled the study door shut and dropped the bolt. Rook. Why return the key? Archie. Because its absence would reveal the mechanism. With the key hidden in Mabel's drawer, everyone would search for an ordinary way to lock the study. Rook. And the copy, Archie, planted in Jasper's pocket later to suggest he operated the device. Jasper examined the old key again. Jasper. The oil around the collar is fresh. Rook. From the Raven socket, Jasper. Yes, but there should also be scrape marks from the ratchet. It makes a loud grinding sound when wound. Archie. How loud? Jasper. Loud enough to be heard in the drawing room, yet no one had heard it. Rook unfolded the black silk. The crescent tear had divided one end into 2 narrow tails on the inner surface. Tiny diagonal lines had been pressed into the cloth. Jasper laid one tail around the key's oval bow. It fitted exactly. Jasper. The killer wound the silk around the handle. Archie. To keep metal from striking metal. Jasper. And fed the loose end against the ratchet. The silk softened every click. Rook. Then the wrapping was not merely hiding the key. Archie. It was a silencer. Narrator. The murderer had removed the key from Mabel's drawer. wrapped part of its silk around the handle, wound the hidden mechanism without attracting attention, then returned the key and refolded the cloth before the 70 seconds expired. That required knowledge, speed, and access. Ivy had the room key, but Silas had borrowed it. Owen knew where the brass key was hidden because Silas had told him. Jasper understood the mechanism and the key. Ruth knew the pantry entrance and Mabel's old phrase. Arthur knew the Ravenlock's original design. 4 unquiet faces had become 5. At 9:17:21 minutes after Silas died, the false striking device activated behind the study bookcase. Rook and Jasper examined its cord. A small wax timer had been fixed inside Ivy's speaking tube. Heat from a candle had softened the wax until a weight fell, pulling the cord. The wooden block struck the bookcase with the sound of a slamming door. The blow traveled through the shelf into the mantel. Inside the clock, the blue strip from the stolen amendment had already been placed between 2 gears. It did not stop the mechanism immediately. It waited loose beside the balance wheel. The impact at 9:17 shook the strip inward. The clock stopped. The false slam and the stopped hands agreed, because the murderer had made one cause the other. Rook, Silas planned the sound. Did he also prepare the clock? Archie, number if he intended to survive his own trick. He had no reason to create a false time of death. Rook, then the killer added the blue paper. Archie, after poisoning him and before leaving the study. Jasper looked toward the mantel. Jasper, the clock is fragile. Whoever placed the paper had to know precisely where the impact would drive it. Rook, a clockmaker would know. Jasper, so would anyone using my stolen drawings. Narrator, Rook assembled everyone in the drawing room and presented the reconstructed sequence. At 8:56, Silas drank poison and died. Before 8:58, the killer left the study and wound the Ravenlock. 70 seconds later, the study door closed and bolted itself. At 9:05, Owen placed a harmless second tea tray in the hall, establishing a false serving time. At 9:17, the delayed block struck the bookcase. The household heard what seemed to be the study door slamming. The impact drove blue paper into the clock's balance wheel and stopped its hands. Only then did the murderer's alibi become important. Narrator, the murderer's alibi began only after the murder was already complete. Ivy claimed to be in her bedroom when the false slam sounded. Ruth claimed to be walking toward the river. Jasper sat before 12 witnesses at the Crown Inn. Owen ate alone in the breakfast room. Arthur remained with Clara Webb and Dr. Hart during much of the period after 9 Every. Account protected the wrong 20 minutes. Rook, where were each of you at 8:56? No one answered immediately. Then Clara Webb spoke from the far end of the room. Clara Webb, Arthur Bell was not with us. Arthur turned. Arthur, you said I remained in the dining room. Clara, I said you were there during most of the time after 9. At 8:50 you left. Rook, where did he go? Clara, he said Silas had summoned him to the study. Arthur's face became still. Arthur, she is lying. Clara, you returned at 8:50. 8, your right cuff was wet. Rook, wet with what? Clara looked toward the evidence table, where the poisoned teacup stood inside its glass case. Clara, tea. Arthur Bell glanced at the cup, then at the stopped clock, then at the black silk that had silenced the 70-second machine. For the first time since his brother's murder, his alibi had been moved backward to the hour when he needed it. It was not there. Chapter 7, Mabel's Riddle. Narrator. Arthur Bell's missing alibi lasted 11 minutes. It should have placed him in handcuffs. Instead, it placed Jasper Reed in a chair beneath a bright lamp, with Elias Rook standing over him and the old brass key on the table between them. Jasper had lied about the Ravenlock. He had lied about his knowledge of the key. He had lied because the truth connected him not only to Silas Bell, but to Mabel Bell and a machine hidden illegally inside the walls of number 13. Rook, begin with your father. Jasper Reed. He built the first lock 19 years ago. That part was true. Rook, the machine we tested yesterday, Jasper, number his device was crude. It pulled the study door shut and slid the bolt. But the spring often jammed. Silas stopped using it after my father died. Archie Goodwin. Yet the mechanism in the wall worked to the second. Jasper. Because I rebuilt it. Rook. When? Jasper. 7 years ago. Rook. For Silas. Jasper looked at the brass key. Jasper for Mabel. Narrator. Ivy Bell sat near the bookshelves. She had asked to be present, and Rook had allowed it, possibly because grief had already done everything, and interrogation could threaten. Ivy Bell, mother knew you, Jasper. She came to my workshop after a burglar entered Bell House. Archie. What burglar? Ivy. A man entered through the pantry one night. Nothing was taken. Father said he had been frightened away. Jasper. He was not a common burglar. He searched the study and Mabel's bedroom. Rook. What did he seek? Jasper. The property ledger. Archie. The ledger everyone now claims not to possess. Jasper. Mabel possessed it then. Ivy. Why would mother have father's company ledger? Jasper. Because she knew Daniel Hale had been framed. Ruth Hale made a sound but did not speak. Jasper continued. Jasper. After the break, Mabel asked me to repair my father's old lock. I refused. It was dangerous. If the spring seized, anyone inside the study could be trapped. Rook. But you eventually agreed. Jasper. I designed a safer machine. It allowed the room to be secured after a person left, but it also contained a release that lifted the bolt automatically if smoke or heat reached the wall. Archie. A mechanical night watchman. Jasper. That was Mabel's phrase. I called it the night porter. Rook. Why hide its control in a carved raven? Jasper. Mabel chose the raven. She said, a thief watches doors and windows, but never asks whether the house is watching him. Archie. She had a taste for riddles. Ivy. She spoke that way when she wanted father to think she was being foolish. Narrator. Jasper nodded. Jasper. Mabel understood machines better than Silas realized. She helped test every delay. 70 seconds gave her enough time to leave the study, cross the pantry passage, climb the hidden stair, and return the key to her dressing table. Rook. The exact route used by the murderer. Jasper. Yes. Rook. Who knew the route? Jasper, Mabel and I. Silas learned later. Archie. And Arthur. Jasper. He knew his brother had ordered the first raven lock, but I do not know whether he saw the night porter. Rook. Why did you conceal all this? Jasper. Because the night porter was my invention, and Silas stole it. Jasper's voice hardened. Jasper. Mabel paid for the materials. I supplied the drawings and built the mechanism. Silas found my plans after her death and filed them under the Bell Company name. When I protested, he threatened to report that I had installed an unlawful locking device in an occupied house. Archie. So, when you said he stole an invention, you meant the machine that locked the room in which he died. Jasper. Yes. Rook. A strong motive. Jasper. I was at the Crown Inn when he died. Rook. You could have poisoned the tea earlier. Jasper. I did not. Rook. You serviced the mantel clock 3 days before the murder. Jasper. At Silas's request. Rook. You repaired the night porter. Jasper. I disconnected it. Rook. And you knew how black silk could silence the ratchet. Jasper. Anyon, who understood the machine, could discover that. Archie. But only a few people understood it. Jasper. More than you think. Narrator. Jasper looked at Ivy. Jasper. Mabel wrote everything down. Ivy rose slowly. Ivy. In her diary. Rook. Where is it? Ivy. In Mother's room. Narrator. We went upstairs. The diary stood on the lowest shelf beside Mabel's bed, hidden inside the cover of a book of household prayers. It was bound in green leather and fastened with a dull silver clasp. The pages were filled in Mabel's narrow handwriting. No entry contained a plain statement. Mabel's diary. The blackbird has swallowed a brass seed. When the seed turns, the servant without feet walks 70 steps and closes the mouth of the room. Rook. The raven. The key and the night porter. Archie. She recorded facts as riddles, so anyone finding the diary would dismiss it. Ivy turned several pages. Mabel's diary. 2 brothers bought 1 shadow. The elder paid in silence, the younger signed in smoke, and the dead clerk carried both debts. Ruth leaned over the page. Ruth. The dead clerk was Daniel. Arthur Bell. It proves nothing. Mabel was fond of word games. Archie. Word games rarely include property fraud. Mabel's diary. When the 13th mouth closes, the honest account continues beneath the dishonest one. Rook, Control 13, Jasper. The master recorder created a second roll. The public counter stopped, but an inner drum continued recording. Rook. You knew that, Jasper. My father designed the second drum as protection against altered accounts, Archie. So when someone used Control 13 to stop the visible record, the hidden drum kept counting. Jasper. Yes. Then Daniel's innocence was recorded. Jasper. If the inner roll survived the fire. Narrator. Rook examined the diary's binding near the middle. A page had been torn away close to the stitching. The removal was not recent. The exposed edge had yellowed. Rook. What was written here? Jasper shook his head. Ivy touched the gap. Ivy, I don't know. Archie, did you ever read the diary before? Ivy, only parts. Mother gave it to me shortly, before she died. But I could not understand most of it. Rook. Who else saw it? Ivy looked toward Owen Bell. He was standing in the bedroom doorway. Ivy. Owen. Owen Bell. That was 6 years ago. Ivy. After Mother's funeral, I came in and found you sitting beside the bed with the diary open. Owen, I was looking for a letter. Ivy. You told me you had mistaken it for a prayer book. Owen, I had. Archie. You read a prayer book lying open inside another prayer book. Owen's expression tightened. Rook. Did you tear out the missing page? Owen. Number Rook. Did you learn where the brass key was hidden? Owen. Number Archie. Then why did you recognize it? Owen. Silas showed it to me 12 days ago. Archie. You told us Silas only described where to find it. Owen. I may have been unclear. Rook. You have been unclear with great consistency. Narrator. Rook took the diary to Mabel's dressing table and examined the torn place beneath the lamp. The page following the missing sheet carried faint pressure marks. Mabel had written heavily enough for parts of the lost riddle to leave an impression. I brought a pencil from the desk, but Rook stopped me. Rook, the laboratory will photograph it. Archie. Wolfe will want a copy. Rook, Wolfe can wait. From the doorway, Owen gave a quiet laugh. Owen, can he? Rook. What does that mean? Owen, nothing. Rook. You are close to discovering how little nothing can mean in a police station. Narrator. Owen's composure had returned, but it no longer resembled armor. It looked borrowed. Rook ordered him taken downstairs. The diary went to the laboratory. By late afternoon, angled light and enlarged photographs had recovered fragments from the missing page. Mabel's lost riddle. The false name has no face. The keeper of law carries it. Beneath the stone that remembers, when the night servant closes the room. The rest had been lost with the page. Graham Stone read the fragments twice. Stone, the keeper of law could mean anyone. Archie, not everyone in this house carries legal papers. Stone, you are implying that I removed the page. Archie, I haven't had time to imply it. You arrived there by yourself. Rook, what is the false name? Stone, I don't know. Ruth, the man who received the second property payment. Rook, Silas said the man never existed. Archie, but Mabel's riddle says the keeper of law carries him. That could mean the false identity was preserved in a legal document. Stone closed his leather case. Stone, I have represented the Bell family for 12 years. The property transactions occurred 19 years ago. Rook, who represented them then? Stone, my father. Another dead man entered the case. Archie, convenient. Stone, My father was an honest solicitor. Ruth, so was my husband, an honest clerk. I telephoned Wolfe and read him the recovered fragments. Wolfe, punctuation, Archie, none survived. Wolfe, line arrangement, Archie, 4 separate lines, Wolfe, and the first letter of each complete riddle on the surrounding pages. I checked. The 5 riddles before the missing page began with the letters N, I, G, H, and T. The 5 after it began with P, O, R, T, and R, Archie. Night porter, Wolfe. The entries form an index. Mabel Bell concealed a second message in the initial letters. Archie. The missing page supplied 1 or more letters. Wolfe. How many lines were on it? Rook. 14 according to the binding marks. Wolfe. Then recover the opening word of each line. Mr. Goodwin, bring the diary and all concerned persons to my office tomorrow morning. Archie. You're taking the case. Wolfe. I accepted Silas Bell's payment. Archie. You called it an unsolicited deposit. Wolfe. Circumstances have solicited me. Narrator. At 9 the next morning, before we could leave Bell House, an officer searched Owen's luggage again. Inside the hollow handle of his traveling case, he found a folded piece of yellowed paper. It was the page torn from Mabel's diary, or it appeared to be. The paper matched the diary. The torn edge matched the binding. Mabel's handwriting covered both sides. But one corner carried fresh black clock oil. Owen stared at it. Owen, that was not there last night. Rook, you expect me to believe someone entered a guarded room and hid it? Owen, yes, Archie, I do. Rook turned to me. Archie, the killer has planted a weapon, a copied key, and now a diary page. Each object appears after we discover why it matters. Someone is following the investigation and supplying answers. Rook, false answers. Archie, answers that lead away from the missing ledger. Rook unfolded the page. Mabel's 14-line riddle had been crossed out with a single black stroke. At the bottom, in different handwriting, someone had added, "The night porter serves the man who pays him." Beneath it was a set of initials. Ob Owen Bell looked from the page to Rook. Owen, my aunt never wrote that. Rook, number, someone did. Archie, someone inherited her secret, but not her wisdom. Narrator. Rook folded the page and placed it in an evidence sleeve. The original riddle might have named the person who created the false account 19 years ago. The added sentence named Owen. One of them was meant to reveal the truth, the other was meant to survive it. Chapter Bar. The Silk Speaks. Narrator. Owen Bell arrived at Nero Wolfe's office wearing black evening gloves. It was 10 in the morning. That was not proof of murder, but it was proof that Owen preferred appearance to comfort. The day was warm. The sky over Manhattan had cleared, and no sensible man needed gloves indoors unless he wished to hide his hands or improve his manner. Owen did not improve his manner. Owen Bell. I was told Mr. Wolfe had discovered something. Archie Goodwin. He discovers breakfast at 8:30, orchids from 9 until 11, and murderers when the fee justifies it. You're early for the 3rd. Narrator. Inspector Elias Rook entered behind him, carrying Mabel Bell's diary, the brass key, and 3 sealed evidence sleeves. Ivy Bell, Ruth Hale, Jasper Reed, Arthur Bell, Clara Webb, Graham Stone, and Dr. Owen Hart followed. The office was not built for a family argument, but it had survived worse. Wolfe sat behind his desk. A spray of yellow orchids stood in a vase near his right hand. He objected to cut flowers as a rule, but Fritz had placed them there before remembering the rule, and Wolfe had decided that moving them would require more effort than tolerating them. The old brass key rested upon a square of white paper. Its black silk wrapping lay open beside it. Wolfe. Mr. Bell. Remove your gloves. Owen. Why? Wolfe. Because you are indoors. Owen. That is not an answer. Wolfe. It is sufficient. Rook. Take them off. Narrator. Owen pulled off the right glove, then the left. He dropped both upon my desk. The gloves were black cloth with narrow silver stitching around the cuffs. The outer fabric was unbroken, but the left glove turned stiffly, as if part of its lining had been cut away. Rook picked it up. A crescent, Jan-shaped piece was missing from the black silk inside the palm. 3 loose silver threads hung from the torn edge. Rook, where is the missing lining? Owen, I don't know. Archie, do your clothes often lose pieces without reporting it? Owen, the gloves are old. Ivy Bell. No, you bought them last winter. Owen looked at her. Ivy. I was with you. Wolfe. Mr. Goodwin, the silk. I carried Mabel's wrapping to Rook. He placed the torn edge of Owen's glove beside the crescent opening in the strip. The shapes matched. More important, the 3 loose silver threads from the glove continued 3 faint silver lines woven into the old black silk. The room became quiet. Rook removed another evidence sleeve. It contained the crescent scrap found behind Mabel's broken mirror. Rook, we believe this scrap fitted the wrapping. Wolfe, you believe the shape fitted, the weave did not. Rook, the laboratory confirmed it this morning. The mirror scrap came from Mabel's gown and carries Jasper's father's blood. The key wrapping contains an added piece cut from Owen's glove lining. Archie, 2 pieces of black silk, 1 old and 1 new. The eye accepted them as one because the killer wanted it to. Wolfe, no. The killer used the new silk for a practical purpose. Confusion was a benefit, not the purpose. Jasper leaned forward. Jasper Reed, to silence the ratchet. Wolfe, exactly. Narrator, the old strip from Mabel's gown, had once wrapped the key completely. Age had weakened it near the crescent tear. When the killer removed the key and wound the night porter, the old cloth began to split. A fresh piece was needed to cover the handle and keep the ratchet quiet. A crescent had been cut from Owen's glove lining. The 3 silver threads made the identification exact. Rook, you wound the mechanism. Owen, no. Rook, your glove repaired the silk used to silence it. Owen, someone took my glove. Archie, when? Owen, during dinner. I left my coat and gloves in the front hall. Ellen Shaw, the gloves were in your coat pocket when I hung it up. Owen, then anyone passing through the hall could take one. Rook, why put it back? Owen, ask whoever is framing me. Arthur Bell, stop talking. Owen turned toward his father. Owen, you wanted me to speak before. Arthur, not without counsel. Wolfe, Mr. Stone is present. Graham Stone. I represent the Bell estate, not Owen individually. Archie, that family loyalty has been warming the room all morning. Narrator, Wolfe touched the edge of Mabel's diary. Wolfe, you read this after your aunt's funeral, Mr. Bell. Owen, I looked through it. Wolfe, you tore out a page. Owen, no. Wolfe, you learned the location of the key. Owen, Silas told me. Wolfe, that is true. But incomplete. Silas told you where the original lay, because he knew you had already read the riddle describing it. Owen said nothing, Wolfe. You copied the key at his direction. You accepted money to confirm the false slam at Jiu-Jitsu. You forged trust checks. You were about to be disinherited. These facts make you a liar, a thief, and an excellent suspect. They do not yet make you a murderer. Rook looked at Wolfe. Rook, you're defending him. Wolfe, I am separating nouns. Narrator, the telephone rang, I answered. An officer at Bell House asked for Rook. I handed him the receiver. He listened, spoke 3 words, and hung up. Rook misses. Hale found something in Owen's photography room. Owen, she had no right to enter. Ruth Hale, the police had already searched it. They missed the sink cabinet. Rook, what did you find? Ruth removed a folded handkerchief from her handbag. Inside it was an empty brown glass jar with a black screw cap. Jasper stepped away. Jasper, you brought that here. Ruth, it is empty. Dr. Hart, do not touch it. Ruth placed it on the corner of my desk. Rook wrapped the jar in an evidence cloth. Rook, the label has been removed. Ruth, there was a second label beneath it. She handed him a wet scrap of paper. Printed upon it were the words, darkroom use deadly if swallowed. Dr. Hart, examined the jar without touching it. Heart, a fixing compound used in early photographic work. One form contains the same mineral found in Silas's tea. Rook, enough to kill. Heart, a spoonful would be more than enough. Owen, that jar did not contain poison. Ruth, how do you know? Owen, because it held plate cleaner. Ruth, the inner label says otherwise. Owen, the inner label was added. Rook, when did you last use the jar? Owen, a month ago. Rook, why keep an empty poison jar? Owen, I didn't. Someone put it there. Archie, your room has become as hospitable to planted evidence as Jasper's coat. Narrator Rook sealed the jar. A laboratory officer took it away. Ruth's discovery troubled me. She knew Owen's photography room. She knew the pantry passage. She knew Mabel's gown and the history of Daniel Hale. She also had the strongest reason to expose the Bell family. But finding evidence is not the same as planting it. It is merely close enough to require attention. Wolfe asked for the carbon sheets recovered from Silas's study. Clara Webb handed me a stack of thin black papers taken from the waste drawer beneath Silas's desk. Most carried reversed impressions from ordinary letters. One bore the outline of several trust checks. Clara had found it that morning after noticing the drawer's false bottom. Wolfe did not touch it. Wolfe, Mr. Goodwin. I held the carbon sheet against the window. Under strong light, the check impressions became readable. 3 payments had been made from the Bell Family Trust. Each was payable to a company called North Street Camera Supply. The total was $28,000. The signatures appeared to be Silas Bell's. Clara Webb. They are not. Owen, you cannot know that from carbon impressions. Clara, I typed Silas's correspondence for 11 years. He never crossed the final stroke of his B. These signatures do. Wolfe, who owns North Street Camera Supply. Rook, a holding company. Its bank account was opened under the name Oliver Brown. Archie, Ob Evrione looked at Owen. Owen, that is not my name. Rook, the account address is a rented box 2 streets from your photography club. Owen, coincidence. Wolfe, a word used when facts meet without permission. Narrator Clara produced another carbon copy. It was a letter from Silas to Graham Stone, dated the morning of the murder. Silas's letter. I have confirmed that Owen forged my signature upon 3 trust checks. At tomorrow's meeting, I shall remove him as a beneficiary and deliver the copies to Detective Rook. No family consideration will alter this decision. Owen, he threatened it. Rook, he had prepared the papers. Owen, he might have changed his mind. Archie, a man who writes to a solicitor and a detective is taking the threat for a walk. Owen, I needed money. I took it. I intended to repay it. Wolfe, with what? Owen did not answer. Wolfe, you forged the checks. Owen, yes, Arthur, Owen. There is no point denying what they can prove. Rook, did Silas confront you, Owen? That afternoon. Rook, did you enter the study before 8:56? Owen, number Rook. Did you poison his tea? Owen, number Rook. Did you stab him after death? Owen, number Rook. Did you wind the night porter? Owen, that proves nothing. Anione could have wound the door closer. Wolfe opened his eyes wider. Wolfe, door closer. Owen stared at him. Wolfe, Mr. Reed called it the night porter. Inspector Rook called it the locking mechanism. Mr. Goodwin called it the Raven lock. No one in this office has called it a door closer. Owen, it is what the machine does. Jasper, number, that is what my workshop plans called its final gear. Rook, plans Owen claims never to have seen. Owen's face tightened. Archie, you inherited Mabel's secret after all. Owen, I read the diary. I found the old drawings. That is not murder. Wolfe, where did you find the drawings? Owen, in the printing works. Jasper, they were stolen from my workshop. Owen, Silas had copies. Wolfe, and the torn diary page. Owen, I took it after Mabel's funeral. Ivy rose. Ivy, you lied to me for 6 years. Owen, The page mentioned a second account roll. I thought it might contain information about my trust. Ruth, it contained proof that Daniel was innocent. Owen, I did not understand it then. Wolfe, but you understood it 12 days ago, when Silas asked you to copy the brass key. Owen looked toward the door. Rook stepped between him and it. Rook, where is the true missing page? Owen, you have it. Wolfe, number the page found in your case is a skillful copy. The torn edge was pressed against the diary and stained to resemble age. Mabel's original page remains elsewhere. Rook, how do you know? Wolfe, the copy contains the phrase, "the man who pays him." Mabel's surrounding entries never call the night porter a man. She calls it a servant without feet. The writer imitated her hand, but not her thought. Archie, who made the copy? Wolfe, someone with access to old paper, printing ink, and Mabel's diary. The Bell family owned a printing company. That answer did not narrow the field enough to be useful. The telephone rang again. The laboratory had tested the darkroom jar. It had held the poison found in Silas's tea. One fingerprint survived beneath the removed outer label. It belonged to Owen Bell. Rook took out his handcuffs. Owen, I used the jar months ago. That proves possession, not murder. Rook, the glove, the poison, the forged checks, the copied key, the false alibi, the stolen diary page. How much proof do you require? Owen, proof that I was in the study. Wolfe, indeed. Rook paused. Wolfe leaned back, closed his eyes, and pressed his lips together. Wolfe, do not arrest him yet. Rook, you have something. Wolfe, I have an excess. The evidence against Mr. Bell is abundant, and abundance is not always nourishment. Owen, then you believe me. Wolfe, number, I believe you have lied whenever truth demanded courage. But you are correct about one point. Anyone who possessed the key and knew the route could have wound the night porter. Wolfe opened his eyes. Wolfe, the silk proves that someone had Owen's glove. It does not prove Owen held the key. The jar proves he handled poison. It does not prove he poured it. The checks prove motive. They do not prove presence. Rook, what will? Wolfe, Mabel's original page. Narrator, at that moment, Ruth Hale gave a small gasp. She was staring at Mabel's diary. The silver clasp, dull when she brought it from Bell House, now shone along one edge. Wolfe took a magnifying glass and examined it. The clasp was hollow. Inside it lay a narrow roll of paper, not the missing diary page. A photographic strip. I held it to the desk lamp. The image showed the printing works clockroom 19 years earlier. Mabel Bell stood beside the master recorder. Daniel Hale was at her left. Jasper's father was at her right. Behind them, partly reflected in the glass face of the machine, stood a fourth person. The face was blurred, but the person wore a signet ring bearing the Bell family raven. Arthur Bell wore the same ring on his right hand. So did Owen. Chapter 9. The word that betrayed him, narrator. The photograph showed two men wearing the Bell family raven, but only one had called the night porter a door closer. The room fell silent. Owen Bell stood beside the red leather chair in Nero Wolfe's office. One glove lay upon my desk. The other remained in his hand. Elias Rook watched him. Rook, I never called the hidden machine a door closer. Owen Bell, it closes a door. Rook, Jasper called it the night porter. Goodwin called it the raven lock. I called it the hidden mechanism. You called it by the term written on Jasper's stolen workshop plan. Owen, Jasper used the words 5 minutes later. Wolfe, after you had spoken them. Owen looked at Wolfe. Wolfe, the order matters. You betrayed knowledge before Mr. Reed confirmed its source. Owen, I told you I had seen the drawings. Wolfe, you admitted that only after the mistake before it. You claimed to know the key solely because Silas described it to you. Owen, knowing a machine does not prove I used it. Wolfe, number, but it tells us which evidence deserves arrangement. Narrator, Wolfe leaned back. His eyes closed, but no one mistook that for inattention, Wolfe. Inspector, Mr. Bell's right cuff. Rook stepped forward. Owen pulled his arm back. Rook, hold still. Owen, you have no warrant to search me. Rook, your coat and gloves were admitted as evidence. When you consented to their examination, you may object again at the station. Rook turned back. Owen's right cuff, a line of rust. Red dust marked the inner fold. It was faint, but it carried a darker streak of oil. Jasper Reed bent closer. Jasper Reed, that is gear oil from the night porter. Owen, it is dirt from Bell House. Rook, the laboratory will decide. Wolfe, the laboratory has already identified the mixture found on the Raven: brick powder, graphite, animal glue, and clock oil. Ordinary dirt would need remarkable ambition to imitate it. Owen's remaining glove was examined next. The edge beneath the silver stitching had darkened where oil had soaked through the cloth. Embedded in the seam were 2 tiny flakes of red brick. The missing crescent of lining had supplied the fresh silk, wrapped around the brass key. The cuff carried the wall's dust. The glove carried its oil. The careless word carried the knowledge. Rook placed all 3 facts on the desk without speaking. Owen, someone wore my coat, Archie Goodwin, and borrowed your vocabulary. Owen, someone could have smeared the cuff after the murder. Rook, the oil lies beneath the folded hem. It reached the cloth while your arm was inside the sleeve. Owen, you cannot prove that. Wolfe, we can. Owen's eyes moved toward him. Wolfe, your tailor uses a water-soluble stiffener inside the cuff. Fresh oil dissolved it and carried red dust between the layers. Had someone rubbed the outside later, the inner stiffener would remain undisturbed. Rook allowed himself a small nod. Rook, you wound the night porter. Owen, number Wolfe. You took Jasper Reed's spindle, punctured the body after death, and planted the weapon with your dinner. Owen, number Wolfe. You have exhausted the word without improving it. Arthur Bell rose from the couch. Arthur Bell. Owen, say nothing more. Owen, you have been telling me that all my life. Arthur, I am trying to protect you. Owen, you are trying to protect the Bell name. Ivy Bell, there may not be much left. Narrator. Owen looked at his cousin. For an instant, the charm and polish fell away. What remained was not fear. It was resentment so old that it had learned patience. Wolfe opened his eyes. Wolfe. Mr. Goodwin, the timetable. I took the typed sheet from my desk. Archie, at 8:40 Ellen Shaw, carried Owen's dinner tray to the breakfast room and saw him there. At 8:43, Clara Webb saw Silas enter the study. At 8:47, Owen left the breakfast room through the pantry door. Owen, no one saw that. Archie. The pantry clock did. Rook, explain. Wolfe, the night porter was connected to the old servant's clock circuit. Opening the pantry passage door interrupted the current for 4 seconds. The kitchen clock lost those 4 seconds. It had been exact when Mrs. Shaw set the dinner trays at 8:30. 5. Jasper stared. Jasper, my father used the same safety circuit in the first Raven lock. Wolfe, yes, Mr. Goodwin compared the kitchen clock with the landing clock. It was 4 seconds slow. Archie, at 8:47, Owen entered the wall passage. He carried the poisoned tea prepared from the chemical jar in his photography room. Owen, guesswork. Archie, the tray's underside, carried the same red dust found in the passage. Wolfe, continue. Archie, at 8:50. Owen reached the study through the concealed panel behind the bookcase. Silas expected someone else, or expected Owen at a later stage of his plan. The recorder captured him saying, "You came early, Dr. Owen Hart." The poison had not yet acted. Wolfe, not yet. Silas began drinking after Owen entered. The phrase meant that Owen had arrived before the arranged time. Silas did not yet understand that the tea had been poisoned. Archie, Owen demanded the forged check copies and the disinheritance letter. Silas refused. Within minutes, the poison stopped his heart. Rook, at 8:56. Archie, Owen used Jasper's spindle to make a wound beneath Silas's ear. He took the blue amendment, tore off a strip, and placed it loosely inside the mantel clock. He knew the false slam at 9:17 would shake the paper into the balance wheel and stop the hands. Jasper, because he had stolen my plans for the striking device. Wolfe, and because Silas had told him about the staged slam. Owen, you said Silas planned the false sound himself. Wolfe, he did. That was your opportunity. Silas intended to use the false slam to frighten the person named in Mabel's diary. You turned his stage trick into a false time of death. Narrator Wolfe's voice remained quiet. He did not need volume. Facts were doing the pushing. Archie, Owen left the study through the bookcase panel at 8:57. He crossed the pantry and reached the raven socket outside. He removed Mabel's original key from his pocket. Ivy, how did he get it? Wolfe. Silas had borrowed your bedroom key and shown Owen where the brass key was hidden. Owen removed it before dinner. Archie. He wrapped the crescent from his glove lining around the handle, silencing the ratchet, and wound the night porter. The 70 seconds began. Rook. Then he ran through the pantry passage, climbed the hidden stairs, entered Mabel's bedroom, and replaced the key inside the dressing table drawer. Archie. 40. 3 seconds to reach the room, 12 seconds to fold the silk and close the false back, 11 seconds down the servants' stairs to the breakfast room. Jasper. 60. 6 seconds. Archie. 4 seconds remained when Owen sat down at his tray. Then the night porter pulled the study door shut and dropped the bolt. Owen. No one saw me return to dinner. Wolfe. But your food did. Owen gave a bitter laugh. Owen. Now a plate is a witness. Wolfe. A poor one, but adequate. The beef was cold when served. When she removed the tray later, the butter had melted only on one side. Rook. Meaning. Wolfe. Owen began eating before he left. He cut the beef, disturbed the potatoes, and abandoned the plate. When he returned, the upper surface had cooled. He turned the potatoes to expose their warmer undersides and create the appearance of a recently eaten meal. Archie. That is why the knife was clean when Ellen collected the tray. Owen wiped it after using the blade to cut the crescent from his glove lining. Owen looked at the gloves on my desk. The right glove had 3 faint grease marks from the dinner knife. Rook. At 9:05, you carried the harmless second tea tray into the hall. That established the official serving time. Owen. At Silas's instruction. Wolfe. Yes, you obeyed the dead man because his instruction improved your alibi. Archie. At 9:17, the wax timer released the weight in Ivy's speaking tube. The block struck the bookcase. Everyone heard what sounded like the study door slamming. The impact stopped the prepared clock. Rook. By then you had been visible for 20 minutes. Narrator. The murderer's innocence began after the murder was complete. Jasper pointed toward the copied brass key. Jasper, you put that in my pocket. Owen said nothing. Jasper, you stole the spindle from my workshop. You stole my night porter plans. You used my clock oil and my striking cord. Wolfe. Mr. Bell intended the mechanism, if discovered, to condemn the bitter clockmaker whose invention Silas had stolen. Jasper Reed had motive, knowledge, and no alibi before dinner. The copied key in his pocket completed the picture. Rook. But Owen's own evidence was everywhere. Wolfe. Deliberately. Rook looked at Wolfe. Wolfe. The excess troubled us, as it was meant to. The spindle carried Owen's gravy. The false diary page bore his initials. The poison jar waited in his photography room. Each discovery was obvious enough to suggest planting. Mr. Bell wished us to conclude that someone was constructing a crude case against him. Archie. And we did. Wolfe briefly. Owen. That is nonsense. Why would I plant evidence against myself? Wolfe. To survive the evidence you could not remove. You knew the glove silk might be traced. You knew Silas had carbon copies of the checks, though you could not find them. You therefore made the accusation against yourself so excessive that a thoughtful investigator would resist it. Rook. Then shift suspicion to Jasper. Wolfe. Yes. Mr. Reed owned the spindle, designed the machine, supplied the cord, used the oil, and hated Silas for stealing the invention. Jasper crossed the room. Jasper, you killed him with my work. Owen did not move. Jasper, you made the machine a murderer. Wolfe, number a machine has no intention. Mr. Bell supplied that. Narrator, Rook removed the photograph from its sleeve. Rook, the man reflected beside the master recorder 19 years ago. Was it Arthur or Owen? Wolfe, Arthur. Owen was 10 years old. That photograph concerns the old property fraud, not Silas's murder. The two crimes overlap, but they are not identical. Arthur lowered his gaze. Wolfe, Silas planned to expose both. Owen killed him for the immediate reason, forged trust checks and disinheritance. He then used the older conspiracy to provide a second motive for others. Ivy faced Owen. Ivy, did you poison him before he told you where the ledger was? Owen's mouth twisted. Owen, he laughed at me. Rook, that is not an answer. Owen, he said I had inherited the Bell appetite without the Bell discipline. He said he would leave me nothing and send the check copies to the police. Arthur, Owen, stop. Owen, he had already destroyed us. Ivy, number, he had discovered you. Owen looked toward the office door. I moved in front of it. Archie, the elevator is slow, the stairs are longer, and Rook is holding handcuffs. Choose for comfort. Owen's shoulders dropped. Rook stepped toward him. Owen, the poison was supposed to make his heart fail. Dr. Hart had treated him for chest pain. No one would have questioned it. Hart, you added the spindle afterward. Owen, when I saw the recorder turning, I knew he had left a statement. I couldn't find the cylinder release. I needed another suspect and another cause of death. Jasper, so you chose me. Owen, you hated him. Jasper, I did not kill him. Owen, neither did I, until the tea was already in his hand. Wolfe, you placed it there. Owen had no answer. Rook fastened the handcuffs. Rook, you built your innocence from 70 seconds. Owen, but one careless word tore it down. Narrator. Owen looked at the brass key, the stopped clock, and the silk from his glove. His careful plan had depended upon the household believing a room could close itself but not speak. The room had spoken through dust, oil, cloth, and time. Yet Wolfe did not rise. Arthur Bell remained on the couch. Ruth Hale still waited for Daniel's name to be cleared. The true diary page and most of the property ledger were missing. Graham Stone's father had carried the false legal name, and the photograph placed Arthur inside the clock room 19 years earlier. Owen Bell had murdered Silas. But the lie Silas died trying to expose was older than the murderer. His gaze moved to Arthur, Graham Stone, and Ruth Hale Wolfe. We have not yet solved the reason the room was built. Chapter 10. What the Key Closed. Narrator. At 11 the next evening, Nero Wolfe's office held the living consequences of two crimes committed 19 years apart. Owen Bell sat in the red leather chair with handcuffs on his wrists and a constable behind him. Arthur Bell occupied the couch beside Graham Stone. Ivy sat near the globe, with Ruth Hale and Clara Webb on either side of her. Jasper Reed stood by the bookshelves. Dr. Owen Hart had taken the chair nearest the door, possibly because physicians understand the value of a quick exit. Elias Rook stood at my desk. The old brass key lay before Wolfe, wrapped once more in Mabel Bell's black silk. Beside it were the stopped mantel clock, the recovered fragment of the property ledger, Mabel's diary, the photograph from the hollow clasp, and the copied key Owen had planted in Jasper's coat. Fritz had supplied coffee. Wolfe had beer. Owen had been offered water and refused it, which was the only choice left to him that anyone respected. Wolfe, we have established that Owen Bell murdered Silas Bell. That fact is proved by the poison, the glove silk, the clock oil, the brick dust, the false time, his knowledge of the night porter, and his partial confession. Owen Bell, I confess to nothing. Rook, you admitted placing the poison in the tea. Owen, I said, what you wanted after hours of questions, Archie Goodwin. You volunteered details we hadn't supplied. That is generous behavior for an innocent man. Wolfe, his formal confession can wait. The death of Silas Bell was the last act of an older deception. Unless that deception is exposed, the murder will be explained, but not understood. Arthur Bell shifted. Arthur Bell, you intend to accuse me. Wolfe, I intend to state facts. If they accuse you, complain to them. Narrator. Wolfe touched Mabel's diary with one finger. Wolfe, 19 years ago, the Bell Company purchased several properties on Riddle Street. The public accounts showed fair payments to the owners. The private accounts showed additional payments to a man who did not exist. Ruth Hale, the false name. Wolfe, Abel Brown. Arthur's face hardened. Wolfe. The initials AB appeared upon the fragment, hidden inside the wooden raven. They were assumed to mean Arthur Bell. That assumption was both correct and incomplete. Arthur created Abel Brown by reversing his own initials into a name. Graham Stone opened his leather case stone, and Abel Brown appears as a consulting agent on 5 deeds prepared by my father. Wolfe. Yes, money was paid to Brown, transferred through 3 accounts, and returned to Arthur Bell. The property owners received less than the company records claimed. The difference financed Arthur's private investments. Arthur, Silas approved every transaction. Wolfe, eventually, not initially. Arthur, he signed the accounts. Wolfe, after Daniel Hale discovered them. Ruth's hands tightened. Wolfe, Mr. Hale kept the property ledger. He noticed that Control 13 had been used to stop the visible recording drum while the false payments were entered. He did not know that Jasper Reed's father had built a hidden second drum that continued recording every transaction. Jasper Reed, a safeguard against altered accounts. Wolfe, a mechanical witness. Silas's recorded statement said, the first witness heard nothing. He meant the public drum. Control 13 had silenced it. But the second witness, the concealed drum, continued to record. Archie, machines are bad at family loyalty. Wolfe, fortunately. Ruth, Daniel told Mabel. Wolfe, he did. Mabel confronted Silas. Silas confronted Arthur. Arthur claimed Daniel had created Abel Brown and stolen the money. Arthur, that is what the evidence showed. Rook, evidence you manufactured. Arthur looked toward his son, Arthur. Everyone in this room has manufactured something. Daniel Hale was arrested because you and Silas supplied altered records. Silas knew there was doubt, but he protected the company and the Bell name. Ruth, Daniel died believing no one would clear him. Wolfe, Mabel tried. Narrator, Wolfe turned the photograph toward them. Wolfe. The image shows Mabel, Daniel Hale, and Jasper's father in the clock room. Arthur is reflected in the recorder's glass. He had followed them there after learning that they intended to remove the hidden drum. Jasper's face was pale. Wolfe. Arthur struck your father with an iron handle. Mabel caught the injured man as he fell. His blood tore and stained her black gown. That is why the crescent silk hidden behind her mirror carried his blood. Jasper, the report said my father fell from a loading platform. Arthur, he did. Wolfe, 2 weeks later, we are discussing the first attack. Jasper stared at Arthur. Wolfe. Your father survived the clock room blow. He concealed the inner recording drum beneath the memorial stone in the Bell Works courtyard. Arthur later followed him to the loading platform and demanded its location. During the struggle, your father fell. Arthur, there were no witnesses. Wolfe, there was one. Clara Webb opened a small box and removed a yellowed statement. Clara Webb, Mabel Bell. Arthur stopped breathing for a moment. Wolfe. Mabel saw you leave the platform. She wrote an account and hid it in her diary. Not in the missing page itself, in the initial letters of the 14 lines upon that page. I placed a typed copy on Wolfe's desk. The first letters formed a sentence. Stone keeps the second witness. Stone, the memorial stone. Wolfe, yes, not Graham Stone and not his father. Mabel's riddle referred to the stone bearing the names of Bell workers killed in service. Rook, we opened it this afternoon. Narrator. Rook lifted a sealed metal cylinder from his case. Inside was the master recorder's hidden paper roll, still marked with Control 13's private count. The entries showed Arthur authorizing the false payments through Abel Brown. Beside the roll lay Mabel's signed account of the attack upon Jasper's father and Silas's later agreement to conceal it. Ruth closed her eyes. Rook, Daniel Hale's name will be formally cleared. The charge against him was false. Ruth, after 19 years. Wolfe, truth is not improved by delay, madam, but neither is it destroyed. Arthur's shoulders sank. Arthur, Silas agreed to everything. Wolfe, he did. He framed Daniel, concealed the assault, and profited from the property purchases. Mabel separated from him in all but name. She hid the key to the night porter and recorded the truth in riddles because she feared both Bell brothers. Ivy Bell. Why didn't she go to the police? Wolfe. Daniel had died. Jasper's father was dead. The company controlled the records. Graham Stone's father had prepared the false deeds without knowing Abel Brown's identity. Mabel possessed accusations, not proof. The hidden drum was proof, but she did not know precisely where Jasper's father had placed it. Jasper, she knew the memorial stone. Wolfe, she knew the word stone. She was uncertain whether it meant the courtyard memorial or the solicitor's files. Her missing page preserved both possibilities. Stone, my father's archives contained the Abel Brown deeds. Once compared with the recorder roll, they confirm the fraud. Rook, Arthur Bell will be charged with fraud, conspiracy, obstruction, and causing Jasper Reed's father's death. Arthur looked at Owen. Arthur, and Silas escapes judgment by being murdered. Wolfe, number death prevents trial. It does not confer innocence. Narrator, Ivy looked at her father's empty place, as if she had finally found a way to mourn him without forgiving him. Wolfe, in his final months, Silas discovered that Owen had forged trust checks, that fresh betrayal forced him to examine the older one. He found Mabel's diary, located part of the ledger in the Raven, and arranged to restore the Riddle Street properties. Clara, the Blue Amendment. Wolfe. Yes, it dissolved the Bell Foundation and returned the property interests to the families from whom they had been taken. Owen removed the amendment after poisoning Silas, but Inspector Rook recovered it from the false back of Owen's photography cabinet. Owen, you have no proof I put it there. Rook, your fingerprint is beneath the sealing ribbon. Wolfe, Silas also planned the false slam at Joshua. He intended to gather Arthur, Owen, Jasper, and Ruth outside the study, allow them to believe he had been attacked inside a locked room, then emerge through the pantry passage and confront whoever tried to retrieve the hidden ledger. Archie. A dramatic plan. Wolfe. An idiotic one. He relied upon deception while attempting to expose deceivers. Rook. Owen knew the plan. Wolfe. Enough of it. Silas paid him to copy Mabel's key and support the false time. Owen realized the night porter could create a genuine locked room instead of a staged one. Owen stared at the key. Wolfe, you had 3 motives. Silas intended to expose the forged checks, remove you from the trust, and send you to prison. You also believed the restored properties would reduce your inheritance to almost nothing. Owen, it was mine. Ivy, none of it was ours. Owen, you still have the house. Ivy, the house will be sold. The money will go to the Riddle Street claims. Arthur looked at his niece. Ivy, that is what father intended at the end. It is the only part of his intention worth keeping. Narrator. Wolfe leaned back and closed his eyes. Wolfe, Inspector Mr. Bell is ready. Rook moved to Owen's chair. Rook, tell it from the beginning. For a long moment, Owen said nothing. Then the fight went out of him. Owen, Silas summoned me that afternoon. He had the check copies on his desk. He said I had until morning to return the money, though he knew I couldn't. He said Stone would change the trust before noon. Stone, the papers were prepared. Owen, he threatened prison, disgrace, and the loss of everything I expected to inherit. His voice had fallen almost to a whisper. Owen, I knew about the night porter. I knew the route through the wall. I took the chemical jar from my photography room and added the poison to the tea before dinner. Rook. Then, Owen. I entered through the pantry passage. He was recording a statement. He drank while he spoke. When he saw me, he said I had come early. Archie, you demanded the check copies. Owen, he laughed. He said I was a smaller version of Arthur. Arthur looked away. Owen, when the poison took him, he fell beside the desk. I used Jasper's spindle. I thought the wound would hide the poison and lead the police to Jasper. Jasper, you stole it from my workshop. Owen. Yes, Rook. You prepared the clock. Owen. I put the blue strip between the gears. Then I left through the wall, wound the night porter, returned the key to Mabel's drawer, and reached the breakfast room before the 70 seconds ended. Wolfe. You used silk from your glove to silence the ratchet. Owen. The old wrapping began to tear. I cut the lining to hold it. Rook. At 9:05. Owen. I placed the harmless tea tray in the hall as Silas had instructed. At 9:17, the false slam stopped the clock. Everyone believed he had died then. Archie and Jasper. Owen. I put the copied key in his coat. I planted the spindle in my napkin ring, but I smeared it with my dinner, so the case would look too obvious. I wanted you to think someone was framing me. Wolfe, you also copied Mabel's missing diary page. Owen. Yes, I added my own initials and hid it in my luggage. If it was found, it would strengthen the appearance of a frame. Rook, the poison jar. Owen, I intended to destroy it. Ruth found it first. Ruth regarded him without triumph, Owen. I thought a locked room would make his death impossible to explain. Narrator. No one answered him. Outside, Manhattan had become quiet. The first pale light of dawn entered the front hall windows. It touched the brass key upon Wolfe's desk and turned its worn edges gold. Rook signed the confession. Owen signed after reading it once. The constables raised him from the red chair. As they led him into the hall, Owen looked back toward Wolfe's office. Owen, I only closed a door. Rook took the brass key from the desk. He removed Mabel's stained black silk, wrapped the key in clean white cloth, and placed it inside the evidence case. Rook, no, the key closed the door, your alibi, and the last road by which you might have escaped. Narrator. Owen was taken away. Arthur followed under separate guard. Graham Stone left with the recorder roll and the restored amendment for the courts. Ruth carried a certified statement clearing Daniel's name. Jasper paused beside the empty red chair, then went out without looking at it. Ivy was the last visitor to leave. Ivy, what will happen to Bell House? Wolfe. That is your decision. Ivy. I'll sell it. Wolfe. Good, Ivy. You approve. Wolfe. A house that contains more machinery than comfort has mistaken its purpose. She almost smiled. When the door closed behind her, Fritz entered to announce breakfast. Wolfe rose and headed toward the dining room. Archie. One question. Wolfe, number Archie. You don't know what it is. Wolfe. At this hour, all questions are offensive. Archie. What did the key really close? Wolfe stopped. Wolfe. Nothing by itself. A key is an instrument. Intention gives it consequence. He continued toward breakfast. I remained in the office for a moment, looking at the empty place where the evidence case had rested. The brass key had closed a study door after 70 seconds. That was all the machine had asked of it. But before the case ended, it had closed a false account, a stolen inheritance, a 19-year accusation, and the lie that had ruled Bell House longer than any owner. On Riddle Street, the rain had stopped. For the first time, every room in number 13 was telling the same story.